is. All right, let's call to order the Spark City Council meeting of June 28, 2021, and start off with a roll call.
Mayor Lawson,
Here.
council members Abbott,
Here.
Vanderwell, absent, Anderson,
Here.
Bybee,
Here.
Dare,
Here.
City Attorney Adams. Sorry, Acting City Attorney Duncan, City Manager Cruz.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, and now we'll move on to our opening ceremonies with Pastor Barb West. We had some, and just so you guys know, we got some sad news just a few minutes ago that John Esquaga passed away this morning. So keep him in your prayers.
Thank you, Mayor. Would you bow your heads with me and pray? Our Father in heaven, we just come to you this afternoon to thank you for all of the many blessings that you are giving to us. We thank you for the blessing of John Esquaga and his family and the decades of all that they gave to our city, Sparks. We thank you for all of the scholarships that was given to the kids from Sparks High School, as well as employment, and the list goes on and on. So thank you isn't nearly enough, but we do thank you for giving us John Esquaga. Thank you too, Lord, for Mayor Lawson and this fine group of council members. And we pray that today, as they conduct business for our city, that you would give them the wisdom that they need to do so. We are so thankful to be back in your chambers, Lord, and we're thankful that you are bestowing on our city all of the great things that are in progress right now. Be with us, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, we remain standing for the pledge. Wes, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Sure, happy to. Put your hand over your right heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, we'll go to item 4, public comment. I have 2 speaking cards at this time. Let's start with Rock Cole. Yep, just have a seat and the microphone is on for you.
I just set it down.
Oh, yeah, just the clerk will turn it on for you.
Do I start now?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and council members. Thank you for hearing my comment. The other day on TV, the developer stated that all we had to do is go to the development agreement and a map was provided of what is currently proposed and what the city of Sparks knows about in the development agreement. I found this map. It's the first development agreement that they had, and I know you can't see it, but I'll supply it to you. It shows 1,223 homes, lots, and it doesn't even include this amendment. It is all within the existing CUP right now. And that red area below was considered commercial back then and now is 86 townhomes. So using this map, this parcel would produce 1,309 units. The developer said over and over again that he has to have this piece of ground to meet his 1,200 home criteria in the development agreement. This map proves the reason he can't is because he's increased lot sizes. And it's not the city or the residents' fault. The parcel can be built on as is right now without this addition. The next one I'm gonna show you is, you guys have this. I don't know how, this is the difference between the 266 acres and the addition of the 34-acre parcel to the west. I don't know how it can go from 120, it's been 120 acres of previously disturbed in the mining operation since the beginning of this deal. And now all of a sudden, like magic, and if you read note 2 down below, now it's 136 acres of previously disturbed, which increases their ability to produce more land under the current CUP. I don't know how that's possible, quite frankly, but they came up with that number. That's a question mark. So this is the map he keeps referring to that has been a part all along. I just proved it hasn't been a part all along. But this is the current one. And he says that this proves that he needs this piece of ground. Well, this is just a conceptual map with lots and streets. If this map,
Finish up.
if this map was on flat ground, we wouldn't be sitting here because there'd be no massive slopes or 1,800 feet long access roads to facilitate sewage and storm drain off this project.
Thank you. Next up is Mike Eastman.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm speaking in reference to agenda item 11.1, Five Ridges Development's appeal of a planning commission unanimous rejection of a request to amend a conditional use permit. My name is Mike Eastman, and I live on a property just downhill from the northwest portion of the Five Ridges project, and I strenuously object to any consideration for the CUP amendment. I only have 2 main points. First, I personally attended the Spanish Springs Library neighborhood meeting in February 2018. And as the first development agreement states, we, quote, express concern about the project being visible from Spanish Springs Valley, development of homes on the ridgelines, or being visible from the properties to the north, end quote. What the agreement doesn't capture is that all 13 of us were assured by the applicant's representative, Mike Riley, that there would be no homes on that north ridge line because the quarry was an enclave-type community tucked into the bowl of a quarry. We were even shown pamphlets that stated the same. That first development agreement that Rock even referenced says RC22 and RC23 require that new development provide for the protection of natural features such as steep slopes. You must know by now that the applicant fully intends to completely destroy nearly all of the steep slopes on the northmost ridge, and approval of the COP exacerbates that damage. A February 2018 presentation package was prepared by the Rubicon Design Group for the applicant and is titled The Quarry, Annexation Comprehensive Plan Amendment Zone Change Development Agreement. Covers a lot of ground. It references the 2016 Sparks Comprehensive Plan Goal MG6 and responds with the following. The site topography and conditions lend itself to a compact development form and creates an opportunity for an enclave type setting which is not visually intrusive. End quote. In response to goal H2, it responds with a reference to an isolated bowl. Most significantly, policy RC23 requires new development to preserve and protect significant natural amenities, unique features, e.g. rock outcroppings and drainage ways, and other natural features. In response, the applicant says, the quarry is unique because it can provide for an enclave type development pattern that preserves ridgelines and focuses development in areas that were previously part of the aggregate quarry. I submit to you that either the applicant has been misleading us all since the very beginning, or we've completely lost sight of the comprehensive plan goals and policies. Clearly, the result of an approval tonight is the annihilation of the very features that the CP intends to protect. Also, the developer must know he's violating public trust and his previous communications, indicated by his recent rejection of the application of policies RC28 and C4, policies that limit the amount of grading on steep hills. I'll get to point number 2 in a later comment.
Thank you. Okay, those are the only two comment cards I have on item 4. All right. We don't have any more, then we'll move on. Item 5, approval of the agenda. Looking to see if my computer works. Paul Anderson,
Move to approve the agenda?
looking for a second. I'll second it. Second by Councilman Dare. Is yours not working? Okay.
It's coming up now.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Approval of the minutes. Any additions, subtractions, or corrections? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of the Sparks City Council meeting for June 14th, 2021.
Thank you. Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Christopher Dare. This thing is very slow. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. All right, moving on to 7.1, presentation, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, overview on water supply.
How do I get it full size? I'm sorry. There it is, okay. All right. Good afternoon, Bill Houck, Truckee Meadows Water Authority. Good to be here. I'm gonna be very brief. I'll give you a quick water supply update, talk a little bit about the drought and how we're addressing it. Make a long story short, was not a good winter, didn't get enough of these big storms. Consequently, we are in the midst of our second dry year in a row. We had a 68% of average snowpack this year around, and it was a really dry spring and a really dry fall coming into last winter. And so everything just kind of got away from us. The forecasts fell out on us, and consequently, things are really dry out there. And if you look at the black line here, this is water content of the snowpack from the start of the water year through May 19th. And you can see how it compares to the green line, which is average, where we should have been, and just never quite got there. The runoff into Lake Tahoe ended up being about 11% of normal this year. Puts us firmly in a drought situation, and because water in Lake Tahoe is used to make the required rate of flow at the California-Nevada state line. And when that flow isn't met, that's how we respond to river flows with conservation measures. So we are in what's called an enhanced conservation campaign this year, drought level 2. So the water that remains in Lake Tahoe, there's about 1.8 feet of storage right now sitting up there. That's being pulled on really heavy right now to make that required rate of flow at the California-Nevada state line. And it's going to be used up really quickly. There was no physical rise at Tahoe this year. You can see that by the end of October, Lake Tahoe will actually be at or below its natural rim, which means there'll be no water coming out into the Truckee River. By the middle of August this year, that required rate of flow at the Nevada state line will not be able to be met or sustained, but there still will be water in the river, just not as much as you're used to seeing. And that required rate of flow is measured here at the USGS gauge at Fairhead, up by Tumwa's old Fairhead hydropower plant in the canyon. And about August 15th is when we're projecting to lose the river this year. You can see it was a pretty substantial drop-off. Again, all the water in Lake Tahoe and Boca reservoirs are used to make that required rate of flow at the California-Nevada state line, and that's the only reason for the dams, the only reason that the dams exist. However, despite river flows falling off this year and drought all around us, Tumwa's in great shape from a drought supply perspective. In fact, we've never been in better shape. with the implementation of the new Truckee River Operating Agreement in December of 2015, we've been basically able to about double our drought reserves since that point. And so we go into this drought, 53,000 acre feet. That's almost 2/3 of our annual demand that we use to meet customers. So we're in fantastic shape. We have water in just about every federal reservoir up there right now. And then I think you know that we own Donner and Independence Lakes too. Those are our privately held reservoirs. So this is how we normally meet demand. The blue is surface water we take directly from the Truckee River. On an annual basis, about 80% of our supply comes from the Truckee. We supplement by bringing on groundwater production wells in the spring, run them through the summer to meet summertime peaking. But this year, with river flows falling off about mid-August, we need to kind of make up that gap, make up the hole. And how we'll do that, we'll be releasing reserves from some of our upstream supplies, our reserves. So we don't call upon drought reserves or have to use them very often. This bar chart shows just only 5 times in the last 35 years. But it's it's good to know that we have it up there when we need it, and unfortunately this year we're going to need it. As far as this year's concerned, again, Lake Tahoe dropping quickly, and will be at its natural rim by the end of October. If you look on the far right, the drought levels 2 through 4, we're actually in a drought stage 2 right now, which means, again, we will be in drought operations and drought supplies will be required. And we are in an aggressive water conservation campaign this year. And so one of the things we're looking for is water waste. This picture shows water waste. It's a sprinkler spraying into a shrub. It's sheet flow over the driveway, ponding and running down the street. And this is just waste. This is what we're out there looking for, especially this year. Overspray from irrigating your lawns, from sprinklers. That's almost unavoidable. But this is wasteful. Responsible water use is always promoted at Tumwa, and it's an essential component of our overall water management strategy every year, 365 days a year, whether it's a dry year or a wet year. And you can see in this bar chart over the last 20 years, our gallon per person, gallon per capita per day use has dropped by about 40%, from about 250 gallons per person a day to about 150 gallons per person per day. So our water conservation policies have been working. Standard water conservation practices, again, enforced every year per our Water Efficiency Code, Rule 2. Assigned day watering, always in place every summer, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for even addresses, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for odd addresses, and no watering on Mondays. Again, this summer with the drought and releasing drought reserves as of the 3rd week of August, we're going to be in an enhanced conservation campaign. What that means, we're really aggressive out there right now. You're probably hearing a lot of radio spots, seeing some TV ads, and we're actively engaging with the media. And some of the other things we're doing right now to address the drought is we've extended the no watering hours from 12 to 6. Now, additional 2 hours. We don't want to see people watering between 11 and 7 p.m. at night. So we've overstaffed with water watchers. I have 16 water watchers out there right now patrolling the streets, and they're looking for waste. Regardless of what happens, Tumwa will always be able to supply its customers a reliable supply. They can count on us to do that, providing a reliable supply of high-quality drinking water, whether it's in the middle of a drought. We don't know where we are. We don't know what kind of year next year is going to be, but we will continue to provide our customers that high-quality drinking water, whether in the middle of a drought or coming off the biggest snowpack year on record, 2017. Me personally, I'm looking forward to my friend Punxsutawney Phil coming out of his burrow next February 2nd, seeing his shadow and going back down and giving us 6 more weeks of winter. With that, I'll take questions.
Questions from the council? Questions about Punxsutawney Phil?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I just had one.
Okay, we're moving on to item 7.2, proclamation Plastic-Free July. Who has that one? Paul?
That's me.
Thank you.
Okay, whereas an estimated 8.3 billion metric tons of plastic have been produced since the 1950s, and whereas over 400 million metric tons of plastic are produced globally every year, and that number is expected to double in the next 10 to 15 years. And whereas plastic does not degrade entirely, but breaks down into smaller plastic particles called microplastics. And whereas microplastics have been detected in Lake Tahoe, the Truckee River, and the Truckee Meadows tap water, and whereas when ingested, microplastics can damage aquatic and other creatures, and whereas the United States Environmental Protection Agency estimates that less than 9% of plastic is recycled, and whereas approximately half of the plastic produced worldwide is discarded after just one use. Now therefore, Ed Lawson, Mayor of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim July 2021 as Plastic-Free July and encourage every resident of the city of Sparks to join individuals throughout the world in becoming aware of and reducing consumption of plastic, particularly single-use plastic products. And is Robin here? Robin, would you like to come up and say anything?
Should I come get it?
Just in a minute. We'll come down there and take a picture with you. But go ahead and make any comments you have.
Okay. I should have well, first of all, Councilman, good afternoon. And thank you for declaring July, Plastic-Free July. I should have included another whereas. Plastic is derived from fossil fuels. And fossil fuels are the greatest contributor to climate change. And climate change is diminishing our snowpack and our water supply, ergo Mr. Hawk's presentation. This, Mayor Lawson, is a single-use beverage
I
container.
got 3 uses out of this one. I know.
This is a single-serving snack wrapper. Both are garbage now. It doesn't matter if you find a bottle like this beside the road, as I found this bottle and it's been washed, by the way, or whether it's in your trash can after 3 uses, it's still garbage. Now this bottle, I think these bottles are number 1 and theoretically recyclable, although I couldn't find a recycle designation on this bottle. I don't know whether it's been out there laying next to the road for 20 years or what. But even if a bottle like this is recycled into a park bench, that park bench is going to break down eventually. And it again is going to be garbage. I encourage all of you to, and the audience members, break free from plastic. Choose to refuse, Mayor Lawson and Councilmember Krutz. You have the choice whether you use a single-serving plastic container such as this. I have calendars that I will provide to the clerk for each of you for Plastic-Free July that has daily tips for what you might do to reduce your plastic consumption. Just try it. It takes a little brain engagement, but it's not as hard as you might think. So I will leave these with the clerk, and if any of the audience members want copies, I have those. Again, thank you.
Step over here, Councilman Anderson will take a picture with you and.
Oh, let me take off my mask.
Vaccinated like a new puppy. Okay, item 7.3, Pride Month. Councilwoman Bybee.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson. Whereas all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and the City of Sparks supports the rights of all persons to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. And whereas lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ individuals have had immeasurable impacts on the culture, civic, and economic successes of our country. And whereas the City of Sparks honors the history of the LGBTQ liberation movement with pride, inclusion, and support for social movements that advocate for LGBTQ people in society. And whereas the City of Sparks recognizes the LGBTQ residents whose influential and lasting contributions to our neighborhoods make the City of Sparks a vibrant community in which to live, work, and visit. And whereas the City of Sparks is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, and equality for LGBTQ people in our diverse community, and whereas society at large increasingly supports LGBTQ equality, it is essential to acknowledge that the need for education and awareness remains vital to ending discrimination and prejudice. Excuse me. And whereas this nation was founded on the principle that every individual has infinite dignity and worth, and the City of Sparks calls upon the people of this municipality to embrace this principle and work to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists. And whereas celebrating Pride Month increases awareness and provides support and advocacy for the LGBTQ community in the City of Sparks, and is an opportunity to take action and engage in dialogue to strengthen alliances, build acceptance, and advance equal rights. Therefore, on behalf of Mayor Ed Lawson, Mayor of Sparks, we hereby proclaim June 2021 as Pride Month.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. I don't think we have anyone here to accept that proclamation. Okay. All right, let's move on to consent items. Anyone wish to take a consent item, pull it, or take any of it out of order? Not, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott.
I move to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.4.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, general business. 9.1, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the mayor's appointment to the Reno Tahoe Airport Board of Trustees from the following pool of applicants listed in alphabetical order. Art Sperber. Art Sperber. Art is A, so perfect. Where is Mr. Sperber at? There he is. All right, Mr. Kreutz.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the council. For the record, Neil Kreutz, your city manager. We do have a single appointment here today. The mayor is recommending that you reappoint Mr. Sperber to the Airport Authority. With that, try and answer any questions.
All right, so Art Sperber is the recommendation. Do I have a motion from the council?
You do. I move to approve the mayor's appointment of Art Sperber to the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority Board of Trustees for a 4-year term ending June 30th, 2025.
Mr. Anderson?
I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have one comment. I would just like to say that Mr. Sperber has served on the Airport Authority and represents the city of Sparks and our interests very well. So I think it's incumbent that we have him continue along with Mr. Carey, who have been great representatives with a lot of knowledge in airport and community, and I appreciate their service. Thank you.
Okay. And just from my side too, Art, thank you for your service. I get nothing but compliments of what you and Sean do for us at the airport board, and we really appreciate that. Okay, I got a motion and a second. Please vote. All right, motion carries unanimously. You got by the skin of your teeth, Art. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the mayor's 2 appointments to the Sparks Parks and Recreation Commission from the following pool of applicants listed in alphabetical order. Brad Fitch, Mark Harris, Eric Juarez, Yasmin Lozano, Kelly Lucetti, Megan Mager, Barbara Suber, and Andrea Tavener. And I think is it just one?
There are 2, Mayor Lawson,
Okay, I know I've got Andrea Tavener
and Brad Fitch.
and Brad Fitch. Okay, thank you. All right, Brad Fitch and Andrea Taveners, who I've suggested. The reason I don't remember, because I do these like 2 months in advance. So I'm looking for a motion, Mr. Dare.
Yes, I move to appoint Andrea Tavener and Brad Fitch to the Sparks Parks and Recreation Commission, each with terms ending June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Abbott.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for your service. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the mayor's appointments to the Sparks Civil Service Commission from the following pool of applicants listed in alphabetical order: Pamela Baker, Luis Doria, Cynthia Esparza, and Andrew, I think it's Go, NGO. I don't know how you spell that, pronounce that one for sure. And I think mine were,
Two appointments there, Louis Daria and Andrew Go.
okay. Looking for a motion? Mr. Anderson?
I move to appoint Andrew Go and Louis Dario? Daria to the Sparks Civil Service Commission, each for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2024.
I second that.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks again for your service. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the city manager's recommended appointment to the Technical Review Committee, Washoe County Home Consortium, for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2024, from the following pool of applicants listed in alphabetical order. T. Tran.
T. Tran, yes.
Another single appointee, huh?
For the record, Neil Kreutz, City Manager, Mayor Lawson, members of the council, my recommendation there is based on having conversations with staff, specifically Development Services Manager Ian Crittenden. T has been our representative on the board already, is doing a fantastic job, and it's my recommendation to you, you reappoint her, please.
Thank you, and I would agree with you 100%. All right, I've got a motion, Ms. Bybee.
I move to approve the city manager's recommendation to appoint T-Tran to the Technical Review Committee, Washoe County Home Consortium, for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Abbott?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. I'm waiting for one more. There we go. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. 9.5, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of construction contract AC 5780 with Aspen Developers for the Sparks Marina Lake Level Control Pipeline Project. I'm not going to read all the letters, but I'm going to tell you it's in the amount of $719,915.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson. Good afternoon, members of council. For the record, your utility manager, Kevin Porter. And as Mayor Lawson just described, this is a construction contract with Aspen Developers for the replacement of our lake level control pipeline at the Sparks Marina. The exhibit that you can see on the monitors here shows the marina, and there's a blue line along the south side that parallels I-80. This is the alignment of our lake level control pipeline. It assists in managing the lake level of the marina to the prescribed level by the Federal Emergency Management Association, and it offers us the ability to move water between both our primary and our backup pump stations. In addition to replacing this deteriorated pipe, we will also be replacing some of the retaining walls that will have to be removed to replace the pipe. Those are currently some rockery walls along the marina path along the south side of the marina. We'll be replacing those with a block type, a newer type of retaining wall. This project was approved with our fiscal year 21 capital improvements plan. The engineer's estimate was $815,000, and as Mayor Lawson mentioned, the low bid with Aspen Developers came in at $719,915. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from the council?
I have a
Donald.
question.
Mr. Abbott?
Can we go back to the map real quick? Sorry. So this is going to be, our secondary is the one on our right, and our primary is our new building on the left by the old fish. So this will get us to under the freeway right there.
That's correct. Councilman Abbott, as you mentioned, our primary pump station is on the left side or the west side of this image, the west side of the blue alignment.
Cool.
The backup pump station is that floating dock pump station, which would be on the right side or the east side of this image. And this, as I mentioned during the presentation, this pipeline allows us to move water from either of those pump stations to get it to either of the two culverts that go to the south side of I-80. So in the event there was an issue or one was damaged or on a catastrophic failure with one, we'd still have the ability to move water out of the marina ultimately to the Truckee River.
That was the answer I wanted without asking that question yet. So thank you.
Mr. Dare?
I just wanted, if you could say, do you know when this starts? When do they begin, and when will it be shut down for those who walk the marina? We have quite a few who do that.
Yes, Councilman Dare, our plan is to allow, as you've heard recently, materials lead times for materials has exponentially seemed to expand in the last several months. So we've allowed significant lead time for the contractor to procure the pipe, and that also aligns well with us to get through the summer season of the marina. Our plan is to not start any work out there until after September 1st, and we will coordinate through Julie Duell, our public information officer, to get out the appropriate information for if and when there will be closures on that path on the south side.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions, so looking for a motion, Mr. Anderson.
Move to approve construction contract AC 5780 with Aspen Developers for the Sparks Marina Lake Level Control Pipeline Project in the amount of $719,915.
Mr. Abbott?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, 9.6, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the purchase of two 2022 International HX 520 10-ton dump trucks, including snow plows and a combination sand and brine application slide-in units from Silver State International using the Sourcewell contract in the amount of $580,982.94. Don't forget the 94 cents.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the council. My name is Ron Corman. I'm your Public Works Maintenance Manager. I'm here to ask for your approval to purchase two 2022 International 10-yard dump trucks with plow and sand brine applicators in the amount of $580,982.94. $530,000 was budgeted in the fiscal year 21 fleet replacement program. The additional $50,952.94 will be made up by savings from other purchases from the fleet fund for the fiscal 21 fleet replacement program. Unfortunately, costs went up faster than our estimates were when we put the budget together. The two trucks being replaced were purchased in 1999. Both trucks have in excess of 150,000 miles on them. During the fall of 2019, while we were performing pre-trip inspections on the trucks, we found that there were cracks in the frames of both trucks. The cracks were temporarily repaired, and we started the process of replacement. If approved, we will be utilizing a joinder bid with Sourcewell, a purchasing consortium, contract number 060920-NBS. Typically, utilizing these types of joinder contracts results in substantial savings for the city, and in this case, the city is enjoying a savings of 51% off the price of the chassis from MSRP. This ends my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Okay, Mr. Abbott?
I move to approve the purchase of two 2022 International HX 520 10-ton dump trucks, including snow plows and combination sand and brine application slide-in units from Silver State International, utilizing a Sourcewell joinder contract 060920-NVS in the amount of $580,982.94.
Okay, Ms. Bybee?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a professional services contract, AC 5781, with Bureau Veritas in the amount not to exceed $150,000 for the contract building inspection services in FY22. Mr. Miranda.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and council. Mayor Lawson, with your permission, I would like to give a single presentation for the next three line items, 9.7, 9.8, and 9.9.
Perfect, thank you.
To provide timely permit and inspection services to the city and the development community, we employ contract services from 3 different contractors. So what we do by doing that is we increase the flexibility of our staff, and we also are able to tap into specialized plan review and specialized inspection processes, i.e. apartment complexes and like Hug High School, more complicated type of plan review and inspections. So there are 3 contracts for your consideration today. Item 9.7 is a $150,000 contract for Bureau Veritas for inspections. Item 9.8 is $150,000 for Premier Inspection Services. And item 9.9 is $300,000 contract with West Coast Consulting, and they do both plan review and inspection for us. So these contracts are funded by the Development Services Enterprise Fund. So with that, I'll be willing to take any questions you guys might have.
Okay, let's we'll go on 9.7 questions for that one to begin with. Okay, we'll go ahead and vote and we'll move on to 9.8, but look, pardon me? Oh, sorry, Mr. Abbott. It's a little slower on my end.
Are we using the same vendors for all 3, or 9.7, for 9.7, 9.8, 9.9 that we've used prior?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Abbott, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
those are previously, past year contracts.
Gotcha, so we know what we're getting, we're happy with it. Cool.
Okay, Mr. Dare?
I just, for our millions of people on Facebook and people wondering, so when we do this, we're doing this in lieu of hiring somebody, a staff member to come in. We already have staff in there, but this is specialized, which would, to bring in a specialized somebody for that reason, you'd end up spending a lot more money than we do on hiring out. Am I correct on that?
Yes and no. What it gives us is it gives us the flexibility to be able to put these inspectors and plan reviewers on more complex projects. So it gives us a little more flexibility as far as whether we dedicate our resources to home inspections, or do we dedicate our resources towards like a Hug High, a complex inspection. So it gives us more flexibility in that nature. But as far as whether they're more expensive to hire through contract or through the permanent FTE, I would say that is probably a little more expensive for a permanent FTE.
So, because one of the questions I always have, and just when does it become cost effective for us to consider hiring again instead of this? And that's the balance we're always looking for. And you're pushing buttons next to me.
I can see that. Mr. Kreutz?
I'm pushing his
We're going
buttons.
to call on you without it.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson. Thank you, Councilmember Dare. I would like to point out that it does, in terms of using consultants to supplement our day-to-day workload, it does help us when there is a downturn in that workload to be able to turn off a contract rather than to have to face employee layoffs like we did during the Great Recession. So that is absolutely one of the benefits we as a city, as an organization enjoy is relying on these vendors to help us with peaking in the workload as we are seeing right now.
Okay. Any other questions?
You need
Armando?
Mayor Lawson, members of the council, Armando Arnell, Assistant Community Services Director. In addition to the flexibility that was addressed by the city manager, the other thing I would note is that right now, and for some time now, it's a challenge to find qualified people to hire for these positions. And through these firms, sometimes we're able to identify folks that are able to provide these services to the city that we might not be able to, hire or access through our own hiring process.
Yep, thank you. I know it was a big deal for us during the Great Recession, and that was not fun to lay off 40% of our employees and then try and hire them back 4 or 5 years later. So I think it's a good policy. I think that we're doing the right thing. So with that, Mr. Dare?
Yes. Thank you, appreciate the answers. I move to approve the professional service contract AC 5781 with Bureau Veritas in an amount not to exceed $150,000 for contract building inspection services in FY 2022.
Mr. Anderson?
I will second that.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Okay, 9.7 passes unanimously. 9.8, consideration, discussion, possible approval of professional service contract AC 5782 with Premier Inspection Services in the amount not to exceed $150,000 for contract building inspection services in FY '22. Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson?
Move to approve professional services contract AC 5782 with Premier Inspection Services in the amount not to exceed $150,000 for contract building inspection services in fiscal year '22.
Ms. Bybee?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. 9.9, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a professional services contract, AC 5783, with West Coast Code Consultants, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $300,000 for permit plan review and inspection services in FY '22. Any questions from the council? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare?
I move to approve the professional service contract AC 5783 with West Code Consultants Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $300,000 for building permit plan review and inspection services in FY '22.
Ms. Bybee?
I'll second his motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Consideration, discussion, 9.10. Consideration, discussion, possible approval of resolution number 3384 to augment the FY '21 budget by $8,639,404 in an aggregate to provide appropriations for the general fund, municipal court administration assessment fund, landscape maintenance fund, and road fund.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, mayors of the Sparks City Council. For the record, Wayne Weber, Budget Manager. Before you today is Resolution 3384 to augment the fiscal '21 budget in the amount of $8,639,404 to the various funds listed. This is our annual year-end augmentation request to cover cost approved, but not yet budgeted. The breakout of the expenditures by fund has been included in your packet. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott?
I move to approve resolution number 3384 to augment the FY '21 budget by $8,639,404.00 in aggregate to provide appropriations for general fund, the municipal court administrative assessment fund, landscape maintenance fund, and the capital projects road fund.
Okay, Mr. Anderson?
I will second that.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion by the council?
I just wanted one clarification.
Ms. Bybee?
So just to clarify, this is all what we had planned on in all of these funds, but it had not been budgeted. So it's in the budget. I mean, that's a lot of money. People are sitting there going, $8 million, really?
Well, Councilman Bybee, $7,186,404 were costs that were from the coronavirus that were transferred into the general fund and offset by the CARES funding.
Okay.
So we have to augment the budget for those costs that are in the budget, or we'll get a budget violation at the end of the year.
Okay, so the CARES Act funding is
Yes, yes.
basically, the majority of it is being covered by the CARES Act funding we received.
And the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Cronk, has went through those costs with you during the course of the year. So it's something that you've seen, and this is just the final step in us getting it in the budget.
Right, and I appreciate that. And I know he was very cautious about making sure the city of Sparks was not in violation of any of the provisions of all the money we received from CARES Act and the federal monies to make sure that we weren't getting audited because we were doing things the way we were supposed to.
Yeah,
Okay,
very
thank you
good.
for the
Yes,
clarification.
Okay, any further discussion from the council? I have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 9.11, consideration, discussion, possible approval of resolution number 3383, establishing the Sparks Police Advisory Committee. Chief Crawforth.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and members of the council. For the record, I'm your police chief, Chris Crawforth. Before you today is a resolution to create the Sparks Police Citizen Advisory Committee. This will provide another opportunity for the citizens of our community to have a direct contact point with the police department. The police department has historically relied on community survey responses and best practices as determined by staff. The committee will provide input from the community to improve community relationships and aid Sparks Police Department in directing services to meet the expectations and needs of the entire community. The details of the committee bullet pointed. The committee will be comprised of 7 members, 3 representing various aspects of the multicultural community in Sparks, 1 high school or college student, 1 business owner from the city of Sparks, and 2 members representing the community as a whole. Applications for the committee will follow the same guidelines as other boards and committees, and the police department will assist in marketing for applicants. Members shall serve alternating 2-year terms, with half of the members serving a 3-year term in the initial appointment. The police chief will review applications and make recommendations for members to the mayor for council approval. Members will be required to complete the Citizens Police Academy within 6 months of appointment. The meetings will be held at least every 6 months, and they will be held here in the legislative building, and will have representation from the police department on a consistent basis. The committee will be subject to open meeting law, and the police department staff will be responsible for the preparation and support of the committee, including preparation and posting of the agenda, and the recording and preparation of summary meeting minutes. And that is what I had prepared for you, and I'm here for questions.
Okay, questions from the council? Ms. Spivey.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for, we had requested this last summer. We started conversations about possibility of some type of an advisory committee to really work with you, work with the entire department, improve our community relations, because we think it's very important here. We are highly supportive of our law enforcement. We think you do an amazing job, but we want to make sure our residents have input and are able to be part of their voice being heard, because I think obviously we've seen across the country the fallout in other communities where that hasn't happened, or where there is there's not support for law enforcement. I will say for myself, and I think for this body, that we are strong supporters of you, of the work you're doing. And I think this is one more step in just allowing our community members to step up and go through the academy, which would be, if I still have to do it too. And I know a couple of our council members have. So that is an experience in itself. I've gone on a couple ride-alongs, and you just see it through different eyes, and I think that's important. So thank you for your work in putting this together. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of input we get and a community voice that's there, so that we can all work together to keep the community safe. I mean, that's our top priority for, I feel as a council person, is safety, public safety. So, public safety and fiscal responsibility is our responsibility. And thank you. I appreciate your time and work on this.
Mr. Anderson.
Chief, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to put this together. Everything that you've been doing in the department since you've been there, you've been doing a fantastic job. I truly appreciate it. And this is one of those areas where I think it just goes to show that we're going above and beyond where we were before. And as Councilwoman Bybee said, this was something that we were hearing from the community that they wanted to be able to have a say and have input in. And I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I think it looks great. I'm looking forward to see it coming together. And then for the part where you're requesting that they go through the Citizens Police Academy, I think that's a fantastic idea. And for all of you out there, the millions out there listening on social media, I strongly encourage you to sign up for the Citizens Police Academy when they're available. I went through, actually, Councilman Abbott and I went through it, and it was an eye-opener. I was surprised when they said, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to have fun too. I wasn't expecting the fun part, but it is a lot of fun. So I strongly encourage everyone to go through the program. Thank you.
Mr. Dare.
I think one of the things that I'm excited about for it is that an advisory committee gets to actually, gets to get in and learn. That academy is pretty amazing, and it definitely opens your eyes to see. And so I hope whoever's out there who's thinking about being a part of this, I hope get ready to come, obviously, and be a part of something very important conversation. But I think opening our eyes to see many times what our police walk through every day is very important. So appreciate all you do, and I look forward to seeing this form. Thank you.
Mr. Abbott.
I have a couple of things. I'll give you a shout out, Christopher. He went through the academy too. He went with my mother. So anyone can go through the academy. My mother's a sweetheart and she survived. I know she did. I don't blame her. But when's the next academy opening up, Chief?
We're trying to narrow down a date, but we're looking at a September timeframe.
Okay. And then if anyone's interested in applying for this, how do they go about doing
Through the city's website, where you apply for most things, and then we'll put it onto our website here shortly as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And just from me, I've been following you and your career for a long time now, and everything you do, you've just done outstandingly. And it's hard to believe that you've really only been on the job for, what, 6, 7 months? Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, 8, I think.
8 months, wow. And completely evaluated the department and found needs that we need. You're doing a great job, Chief, so keep it up. This is a great step for the city of Sparks. All right, with that being said, I am looking for a motion, Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve resolution number 3383, establishing the Sparks Police Advisory Committee.
Mr. Abbott.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. I'm going to assume that's going to carry unanimously. Yes, sir. Carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Consideration, discussion, and possible acceptance of a partial reimbursement from 911 surcharge funds for the purchase of Sparks dispatch consoles in the amount of $171,495.25.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the council. I'm still your police chief, Chris Crawford, for the record. So
thank goodness.
I decided to give our police services manager, Lisa Brown, a break coming up here. So before you today is a request to accept reimbursement for just over $170,000, which Lisa took to the E911 committee and was approved by the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners for the purchase of the new dispatch consoles that we are placing in our new dispatch center. And you folks approved that through department funds just over a month ago. So we are getting reimbursed for that. The E911 committee had not had a meeting prior to our requests to come to you, and we needed to order those to make the timelines for construction. So we did not submit it at the time, but we did receive that approval, and I'm here for questions.
Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
I move to accept reimbursement from Washoe County 911 surcharge funds for the purchase of Sparks dispatch consoles in the amount of $171,495.25.
Ms. Spivey.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, 9.13, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an agreement AC 5785 between Washoe County through Washoe County Sheriff's Office and City of Sparks through Sparks Police Department to pay Washoe County Emergency Communications dispatchers to provide shift coverage in Sparks Emergency Communications Center due to staffing shortages for approximately $45,000. You want to explain why we have a shortage of personnel too?
Yes, Mayor Lawson and members of the council. Once again, for the record, Chris Crawford, your police chief. I'll run through that real quick. As you can see, today is an agreement between Washoe County through the Washoe County Sheriff's Office to provide dispatch personnel in our communications center due to staffing shortages from retirements until replacements are hired. The cost will be paid through vacancy savings within the police department's budget. Sparks Police Department manages emergency dispatch services for fire and police in the city of Sparks. Sparks Police Department does not currently have adequate staffing to provide the dispatch services expected by our community without significant overtime, which would result in employee burnout. 2 dispatchers have retired in the last 60 days. 1 has resigned to return home to family in Florida, and 1 retirement is pending in August. Hiring has been ongoing during this time. However, several candidates that have been hired have been unsuccessful in completing training and their probationary period. Currently, we have 2 dispatchers in training and 3 persons completing the hiring requirements. Washoe County personnel have similar training and utilize the same dispatch software system as Sparks and are able to fill the void until staffing is returned to normal levels. And that is what I have prepared for you today.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the council? Ms. Spivey?
So Chief, when do you anticipate our staffing levels will return to normal? I know, how short are we on actual bodies right now?
Right now, we're short 3 positions and then the usual vacations and things like that, which is a lot for us. So with the summer events coming up, my expectation and plan right now is through the end of September, and hopefully we can have it filled by then.
Okay, so we're still hiring.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? All right, seeing none. It's tough to hire in the police department for all positions, and we certainly need them. But we've been having some great success on the police officer side and some lateral transfers. And to that, I'm very happy that we're doing a great job in that. So, all right. With that, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson.
Move to approve agreement AC 5785 between Washoe County through Washoe County Sheriff's Office and City of Sparks through Sparks Police Department to pay Washoe County Sheriff dispatchers to provide communications assistance when Sparks Police does not, sorry, it just changed on me. Sparks Police does not have staffing for approximately $45,000.
Okay, I got a motion. Mr. Abbott?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Chief. 9.15, consideration, discussion, and possible approval to purchase information technology maintenance contracts and software licensing renewals from Summit Partners LLC and other vendors as needed in the approximate amount of $295,550 for fiscal year 2022.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Rich Brown, your IT manager, for the record. This is the annual IT refresh spending item for your consideration today. As a reminder, in years past, our refresh spending we conduct through multiple vendors. Typically, it's Summit Partners out of Las Vegas and CDWG out of, I believe, Chicago. This year, we're adding an additional vendor in Dell Technologies, and that's for a couple of purposes. The first is so that we can broaden our purchasing reach, given the increasing shortages in the technology sector and really every sector out there now, so that we have a better chance at actually getting these items in a somewhat reasonable time frame. It also has the added benefit of diversifying our actual hardware pool. So if we have one vendor that has a bad batch of components come through, we take down less of the city when that occurs. Doesn't happen all that often, but it does happen often enough. And with that, these expenses were approved as part of the fiscal year 22 CIP for IT. And with that, concludes my presentation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Anybody? Mr. Dare.
I move to approve the purchase of technology refresh equipment from Summit Partners LLC, Dell Technology, CWG, or other vendors as needed from the National Association of State Procurement Officials Value Point Contract in an approximate amount of $243,300 for fiscal year 2022.
Ms. Spivey.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of resolution number 3385, governing management, professional, and technical employees for the period of July 1. Did I miss one?
Yes, sir. You've got 9.15.
Okay. See, I marked it off before I got to it. I'm trying to speed the meeting up. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval to purchase information technology maintenance contracts and software licensing renewals from Summit Partners and other vendors in approximate amount of $295,550. Sorry, Rich. I figured when you
No
didn't
problem.
move that I missed something.
Once again, Rich Brown, your IT manager for the record. This is the software side of our annual IT spending. And similar to the hardware refresh, we enlist a couple of vendors. And this is mostly because these are the value-added resellers that we're engaged with the big manufacturers to process their software contracts for maintenance and support. Covers things like our server infrastructure, email security, our physical firewalls, backup, and so forth. This is by no means all of the software we use in the city, but these are the pieces that are governed by these two particular vendors. And again, these expenses were approved as part of the IT general fund budget for fiscal '22. And with that, that wraps up that presentation. I'd be happy to answer any
Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott.
I move to approve the purchase of information technology maintenance contracts and software licensing renewals from Summit Partners LLC, CDW-G, or other vendors as needed from Summit Partners LLC. Oh, sorry, it moved on me. In an approximate amount of $295,550 for fiscal year 2022.
Okay, Mr. Anderson.
I will second that.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, 9.16. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of resolution number 3385, governing management, professional, and technical employees for the period of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, at an estimated total cost of $256,163 to the general fund and $309,538 to all other funds in fiscal year '22, $175,981 to, these are getting very confusing, to $278,853 from the general fund, $232,915 to $350. Wow, y'all are worth a lot of money. That's great. $350,333 to all other funds in fiscal year '23, and $223,385 to $423,886 to the general fund, and $292,212 to $531,744 to all other funds in fiscal year '24. And I'm assuming the lawyer wrote this.
I plead the
Alice,
fifth, Mayor
yes.
Lawson.
I'm getting good at this.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and City Council, and my apologies for the agenda item title. For the record, I'm Allison McCormick, your Assistant City Manager for Management Services. I'm before you today seeking approval of a proposed resolution that would govern management, professional, and technical employees for the city, also referred to as MPT. City Council typically approves a resolution providing for salaries and benefits for this employee group, which includes positions like engineers, accountants, HR professionals, and many others throughout the city. This update to the MPT resolution includes several key changes. It would extend the resolution for 3 years. For the first year, fiscal '22, it would offer a cost of living adjustment of 3%, and then for years 2 and 3 of the resolution, it would be a range between 1% and 3% based on the CPI, or Consumer Price Index. It would also add language regarding using leave in a health emergency in the anticipation of perhaps a future pandemic. It essentially memorializes what we've done over the last year as far as using leave. If someone is exposed to a pandemic illness at work, we put them on paid administrative leave while they need to isolate or self-quarantine. In contrast, if somebody gets exposed on their own time, they are required to use their own leave to cover any isolation or quarantine period. It also would add a uniform allowance for the mental health counselors that the council approved as new needs for the police department. That's 2 positions for mental health counselors. Other employees in other groups that are required to wear uniforms do get a uniform allowance, so this just keeps the mental health counselors in line with that practice. It would also add deferred compensation match of $100 a pay period, meaning that if an employee in this group contributes at least $100 per pay period to a city deferred compensation account, the city would match that up to $100. It would also increase the longevity payment maximum to $3,500. The maximum is currently $3,000 for each employee based on years of service with the city, and this would increase that maximum by $500. Finally, in January, the City Council approved a prior version of this resolution that added language regarding pay for people who are acting as department heads on a long-term basis. This resolution would clean up that language and clarify how that extra pay is to be paid. Staff does recommend approval of Resolution 3385, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from the council? All right, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion, and you get to read that long. Just nobody wants to make that motion now.
Let's do it.
Christopher Dare, take on the challenge.
Hold on. Yeah. I move to approve resolution number 3385 governing management, professional, and technical employees, known as the MPT. I learned that. For the period July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, with an estimated total cost of $256,163 to the general fund and $309,538 to all other funds in FY22, $175,981 to $278,853 to the general fund, and $232,915 to $350,333 to all other funds in FY23, and $223,385 to $423,886 to the general fund, and $292,212 to $531,744 to all other funds in FY24.
Very good. Mr. Anderson.
I'll take the easy part. I'll second that.
There we go. Any further discussion from council? Okay, seeing none, please vote. All right, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. All right, on 9.17, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of funding allocation of $178,100 for FY22 as recommended by the Tourism and Marketing Committee for 2021 special events. And we are glad to say 2021 special events. With having none last year, we are so happy. And we'll start with Star Spangled Sparks on July 4th. Expect to see all of you out there in the rib cook-off and hot August nights and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, thanks, Francine. Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Francine Burge, Special Events Supervisor for the record. Before you today for your approval of the funding of $178,100 to go to selected special events for the 2021 season. This funding comes from lodging tax funds through the RSCVA. The Tourism and Marketing Committee is assigned committee to make those recommendations for these funds. The funds have historically been used for special events and marketing activities for the city. In January 2020, the committee recommended funding for distributions for the 2020 season based on applications submitted by local event producers. But because of the pandemic, no events occurred in 2020 and the money was not allocated. On May 24th, 2021, the committee met and chose to fund the events that are occurring in 2021 based on the applications submitted in 2020. The available money in the account is $374,539. This concludes my presentation, and I'll accept any questions.
Questions from the council?
I have a question.
Ms. Bybee.
So Francine, did we not receive any more requests because there's more money in that fund than you're allocating today on the 178? You said there's over 300,000?
Yes, we did not put out applications as directed by the committee. We just chose to save staff time to just go back to those 2020 applications knowing the said events that are going to occur. There were two
Okay.
events that did not come back. One is Lavender and Honey Festival. The other one is the Art Town concert at the Nugget Event Center.
Okay, so these are all events that applied last year, but you've already been in contact with them and they are a go for this year, so they still do need the funding.
Correct, and we do sign contracts with all of our event producers, so they have to put on an event too.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dare?
Yeah, just in the past, I know when I was serving on this, we were at a place where we were running out of money, and obviously not having that last year puts money in the bank. Does that put us at a place to help offset? Is that what that extra money is going to sit there for next year's future events type thing? You said there's about 200,000.
There's $374,539 prior to this allotment, so
Okay.
we will have an outstanding balance after this, and it's up to the committee to make those decisions.
How they're going to end up doing that, but that gives us some room to, because we were out of room.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
We were down to about
Yeah,
$3.
exactly. I thought I think it was 3.
Maybe $3.25. It wasn't much. Any other discussion from council? It's just good to see some special events back. Man, I'm excited about that. Okay, I'm looking for a motion, or is there questions? Any other questions? Okay, motion from the council? Anybody? Mr. Abbott?
I move to approve the funding allocation of $178,100 for FY 2022 as recommended by the Tourism and Marketing Committee for 2021 special events.
Ms. Bybee?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Francine.
Thank you.
All right, 9.18, we have a first reading. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first reading of Bill Number 2784, an ordinance to amend the final approved plan for the Pioneer Meadows Plan Development to add self-storage to the list of permitted uses in the GC General Commercial Land Use category. The Pioneer Meadows Plan Development is generally located east of the Kylie Ranch North Plan Development, west of the Wingfield Springs Plan Development, and south of the Stonebrook Plan Development in Sparks, Nevada, on a site approximately 640 acres in size in the PD Plan Development Pioneer Meadows, zoning district PCN 21-0002/PD21-0003. A public hearing will be held and Bill 2784 will be acted upon at the regular meeting of the Sparks City Council on Monday, July 12th, 2021 at 2 p.m. at the Sparks City Council Legislative Building located at 745 4th Street, Sparks, Nevada.
Okay. 9.19, consideration, discussion, possible approval of resolution number 3374 to abolish the Office Service and Supply Fund, the Marina Special Assessment District Number 2 Fund, and Tourism Improvement District Number 1 Fund.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of council. I'm Debbie Kinder, your Compliance Accounting Manager for the record. And the item before you today is a resolution to abolish 3 funds. It will rescind the originating resolutions that establish those funds. And they are, the Office Service and Supply Fund is out now. The purchasing of that is decentralized, and we last used that fund in 2013. The Marina Special Assessment District Fund was last used.
Debbie, will you please speak up? It's hard.
Sorry.
We're having a hard time.
Can I take this off? Perfect. Should I start over?
No, we're
I'll
good.
go with Office Service and Supply was decentralized and last used in 2013. And the Marina Special Assessment District was last used in 2016. It was used to manage the special assessments at the marina. And the Tourism Improvement District Number 1 Fund was last used in 2020 when the final draw was made on the Legends project. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, question from the council. All right, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson?
Move to approve resolution number 3374 to abolish the Office Service Supply Fund, the Marina Special Assessment District Number 2 Fund, and the Tourism Improvement District Number 1 Fund.
Okay, Mr. Dare?
A second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 9.20, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of resolution number 3381, establishing a fiduciary fund called the Police Evidence Fund to account for the fiduciary activity related to monies seized as evidence by or found and remitted to the Sparks Police Department. Debbie.
Hi, good afternoon again. Debbie Kinder, Compliance Accounting Manager for the record. The resolution before you today will establish a new fiduciary fund for the city. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 84 redefined what fiduciary activity was, and we have had since beginning of time, I think, an account at a credit union that accepts money that the police department seizes or that individuals turn in, and that money is held until the rightful owner can be identified or the case becomes dormant. That money is not reported on our financial statements at this time. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement under their redefinition now defines that as something we should report as a fiduciary fund in our financial statements. So Resolution 3381 will authorize the Finance Department to create the Police Evidence Fund, and we'll establish that with the balance that's in the credit union, which was $220,000 at the beginning of July this year. It's that will allow us to comply with governmental reporting standards. And with that, I'd be able to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the council?
One quick.
Mr. Dare.
So we're putting it in, showing we have it. Do we also show it as liabilities, or just sit there, nothing?
That's what the standard changed. It was always a liability and it was considered a nothing, but now they're considering it a revenue that we take in until it's dispersed. They're calling it an addition instead of a revenue, and a deduction instead of an expense. So the fiduciary funds are reported a little differently.
Gotcha.
But it won't be a liability anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Spivey.
I move to approve resolution number 3381, establishing a fiduciary fund called the Police Evidence Fund to account for the fiduciary activity related to money seized as evidence by or found and remitted to the Sparks Police Department.
Okay, I'm looking for a second. Bueller. Mr. Abbott?
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Debbie.
I'm not leaving yet.
You're not leaving us? Public hearing. We're on to public hearing? I didn't miss one, did I?
Nope, that's it.
I've been known to miss them.
You're on
Public
it now.
hearing. Consideration possible approval of resolution number 3379, authorizing the Financial Services Department to establish an interfund loan to the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Fund, the Community Development Block Grant Fund, and/or Sparks Grants and Donations Fund from the General Fund as needed during fiscal year 2022. Thank you.
Last time for you, Debbie Kinder, Compliance Accounting Manager. Every year I come before you to approve a resolution for interfund loans because any period of negative cash is considered an interfund loan, and a public hearing must be held before that loan is made. So in advance of the year, we ask you to authorize an amount that we think will be enough. Last year at this time, we thought the general fund could afford a $500,000 loan to the grant funds, and that amount would be sufficient to cover periods of negative cash. But 2021 was a wild grant year, and it wasn't enough. We had some funding delays with our community development block grant that we awarded to the Reno Housing Authority, so we had a little out of pocket there. And then we had some big projects this year. We had the E911 committee approved projects, a regional trail project, and the body camera mandates. And we also spent down some of the reserve that we generally use as a cushion in those funds through the forfeiture funds. All of that amounted to a result of spending $920,000 more than we had in the grant funds actually in February of 2021. So we violated state law, and that violation is going to require us to come before you with a corrective action plan after the audit's complete. That corrective action plan is to ask you to approve a higher than normal interfund loan for fiscal '22. Might be closing the barn door after the horse is out, but it's prudent until the pandemic's over and grant activity sort of stabilizes. So Resolution 3379 will authorize us to make interfund loans from the general fund to the grant funds in the amount of $1 million. And staff believes that, well, in order to make an informed decision, you should know that we believe that anticipated interest-free loan of $1 million for a period of 60 days or less from the general fund's available non-restricted assets will not compromise the economic viability of the general fund. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you or the public might have at this point.
Okay, so we'll have questions from the dais first. Mr. Dare?
I just want to know, so if we know we're getting close and we're getting close to that number, could we just do this again real quick so we don't find ourselves with the state looking at us?
We actually, with the CARES Act funding, it was in February. Our grant people didn't have all of the draws that they should have had. They weren't as timely as they should have been. And when we moved the money from the CARES Act out of our grant funds and put them into the general fund in February, and we finally made those moves, then we realized we were negative. But at that point, we just dropped the ball.
But should going in the future, I wasn't trying to point out that you dropped a ball, I promise. That's not my goal. My goal is coming.
It's true, though.
Let's say we need 1.1 million, and we only did $1 million, so we're guesstimating, but we can say we get close. Can we do this again and say, hey, we're getting close? We need to think about this?
Hard to predict when we're going to get close. The check runs are done on Wednesdays, and we've got to have 2 weeks before our agenda items are due to get these in, and it's hard to predict that, really hard to predict when we're going to go negative cash.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? All right, this is a public hearing. We're going to open this up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? I don't have any comment cards on this one. We'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the dais. Looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
I move to approve resolution number, that's a good word there. We mess that word up every time. I move to approve resolution number 3379, authorizing in Financial Service Department to establish an interfund loan to the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Fund, the Community Development Block Grant Fund, and/or the Sparks Grants and Donations Fund from the general fund as needed during FY22.
Okay, Ms. Bybee?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, item 11, planning and zoning public hearings and action items. 11.1, public hearing, consideration of and possible action on appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a request to amend conditional use permit number CU 20-0005 to increase the disturbance area to allow development on the site that is 10 acres in size or larger with slope gradients of 10% or greater over 25% or more of the site, which is 421.58 acres in size and is generally located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway, Sparks, Nevada, in the SF6 residential single family and MF2 multifamily residential zoning districts. Mr. Armando Ornelas.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the Sparks City Council. I am Armando Ornelas, the Assistant Community Services Director.
And I am Sienna Reed, Senior Planner.
The item before you today is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to deny an amendment to the conditional use permit for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges for the Five Ridges project. In terms of a bit of background, the Planning Commission...
Lorna, will you move that mic over in front of you, Nora? Thank you. Or just point it at you. Thank you.
The Planning Commission first heard this item at their April 15th meeting this year. At that meeting, they had received a substantial amount of public comment, lots of emails in advance in opposition to the amendment to the CUP. Those opposing the amendment raised various concerns, including regarding visual impacts, ridgeline development, stormwater runoff and sediment transport, the removal of rock outcroppings, and the loss of access to open space on the Five Ridges project site. Following public comment, the Planning Commission decided to continue the item to their May 6th meeting in order to give the applicant additional time to prepare visual information to better illustrate the proposed grading plan. The Planning Commission resumed consideration of the CUP amendment on May 6th, at which time the developer presented a three-dimensional visual simulation of grading and homes proposed on the northern edges of the Five Ridges site. That visual simulation provided by the developer is not part of the staff presentation today, but we have it available in the event that the applicant does not provide it to you. Again, after more public comment in opposition to the request, the Planning Commission denied the request to amend the conditional use permit. With regard to the City Council's review of the appeal, I'll start by noting that the City Council is the ultimate authority in all land use decisions in the City of Sparks, but has delegated conditional use permit processing to the Planning Commission. As such, the City Council is the appellate body for Planning Commission decisions regarding conditional use permits. The review of this appeal on your part today is de novo, meaning that the City Council is considering the Five Ridges CUP amendment anew, essentially as if you were seeing it for the first time, and can make, the City Council can make its own decision without deference to the Planning Commission's decision. For this appeal, the substantial evidence standard applies, and substantial evidence is evidence that a reasonable person would rely on to support a conclusion. The options available to the council in reviewing and acting on this appeal include affirming, reversing, or modifying the decision of the Planning Commission. The council could also remand the case back to the Planning Commission with direction. I will review these options in greater detail later in this presentation. The presentation of this appeal will proceed in two parts. The first part is the staff presentation. Sienna Reed will provide an overview of the CUP amendment request, the staff analysis of that request, including applicable code standards and findings, and a summary of the public comment received by the Planning Commission. The second part of the staff presentation will involve myself providing you a summary of the Planning Commission's decision, and again, the City Council's options in more detail for acting on this appeal. I'm going to note that there's a lot of material for staff to cover, and so we're asking for your indulgence for a fairly lengthy presentation. I also want to note that other city technical staff, including engineers Erickson and Thomas, are available to answer any questions that you may have regarding the engineering aspects of this request. The second part of the presentation is the appellant presentation, and so they will follow staff. With that, Ms. Reed will present the staff analysis of the case.
Okay, so starting off with an overview of the request to amend the Five Ridges Conditional Use Permit, or CUP, for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. The Five Ridges project site, which you can see outlined in red on this slide, it totals 421.58 acres in size and is located west of Pyramid Way and north of Highland Ranch Parkway. The Five Ridges project site is subject to a development agreement that was approved in 2018. You'll remember that that agreement specifies a minimum of 1,200 and a maximum of 1,800 residential units are permitted, and it has important provisions regarding when required infrastructure has to be in place based on the impacts associated with the project. The agreement also limits the total land area that can be disturbed across the Five Ridges project site to 298 acres, and also requires a minimum of 120 acres of open space be preserved. As proposed, the CUP amendment seeks to increase the disturbance area for natural slopes by 19.8 acres. This area is shown in tan, and it includes the northwest portions of villages 9 and 10, and then also some limited areas on the north side of village 3, 10, 1A, and 1B. Disturbance would also occur in the west portion of village 1B, which is shown in gray here. That area was previously disturbed due to the construction of Highland Ranch Parkway, and it is exempted by the development agreement from compliance with those standards that govern natural slope disturbance, and we'll go into those in a bit more detail here. The existing CUP, which was approved last year in May of 2020, allows for the disturbance of 138.13 acres of natural slopes, as well as acreage that was previously disturbed due to mining operations on the site and then also roadway construction. That existing CUP area that has been approved from a disturbance area perspective is shown in green on this slide. As you can see, the currently approved CUP disturbance area allows for disturbance of most of the Five Ridges project site, including disturbance within Village 10 here along the northern portion of the site and large portions of Village 8 and 9 shown on the northwestern portion of the site. A mass grading permit has been issued by the city for grading within this approved CUP disturbance area. However, it's important to note that the scope of review for the CUP amendment that's under consideration with this appeal is not limited to just the expansion area beyond the approved CUP. This is because grading plans for villages 1A, 1B, 8, 9, and 10, which were not provided with the initial CUP, have been provided with the CUP request. This change allows the City Council to review those grading plans for those villages and apply conditions that help to address the final look of created slopes and also the final look of buildings, provided that those conditions don't impair the existing mass grading permit that has been issued. To provide the council with a bit more detail on the proposed grading, this slide illustrates grading proposed for villages 1A and 1B in the southern portion of Five Ridges. For Village 1A, fill will be used to create a building pad that sits approximately 50 to 65 feet above Highland Ranch Parkway. For Village 1B, slopes in the northern portion of this village will be cut, and there will be a building pad that is situated at about the same elevation of Highland Ranch Parkway on the western side of the village, and then about 15 feet above it on the eastern side of the village. This slide shows proposed grading for villages 8, 9, and 10 with a cut fill map. The cuts are shown in red and orange, and then the fills are shown in blue and green. So what we have here are cuts that are proposed to remove existing hilltop and ridge features located in the northern portion of the Five Ridges project site. Fill areas are then proposed to expand ridge features along the north side of Village 9 here, on the north side of Village 10, and then along the western portions of Villages 8 and 9. The maximum cut depth is approximately 50 feet, and the maximum fill depth is also approximately 50 feet. However, as you can see with the varied colors on this slide, those depths for cuts and fills do vary across this portion of the project site. The resulting fill slope located to the north of Village 9 and then also Village 10 varies in terms of the elevation change that it covers, spans between about 15 and 90 feet in elevation. There's also, importantly, a maintenance access road proposed within the fill slope on the north side of Village 9 to point out. To better illustrate cut and fill depths in relationship to fill slope elevation change in 2 dimensions, what this slide shows is a cross-section. It runs through just one point of the Five Ridges project site, running through villages, or Village 8 here to the south, and then Village 9 to the north. As proposed, we have a ridge sitting generally in between Villages 8 and 9. In this general location, that ridge would be cut by approximately 25 feet in depth. The deepest fill area that we see here in this cross-section for Village 8 is approximately 40 feet deep, and it's helping to create this building pad for Village 8. And then, as an example here for Village 9, while the fill slope depth is relatively shallow, it's spanning, when we think about that elevation change, about 80 feet. If you were to look at an alternate cross-section in another point of Five Ridges, the fill slope depths, the cut slope depths, and then the elevation change that you would be spanning would all be different. But this at least gives another way to look at the proposed grading. Several slope treatments are shown on this map. These are the slope treatments that are proposed to stabilize the graded slopes. Riprap, which you can see in the pinkish red color, is proposed to stabilize cut and fill slopes with a gradient of 2-to-1 or 50%. Those riprap areas are generally planned within lots and then also surrounding Village 1B. We have bedrock cut slopes with a gradient of 1.5-to-1 or 66%. Those slopes don't require mechanical stabilization, and they are shown in yellow in limited areas on the northern side of Village 1A and then also Village 1B. A revegetated bonded fiber matrix, which is shown in green, would also stabilize fill slopes with a gradient of 2-to-1 or 50% at the perimeter of the Five Ridges project site. The bonded fiber matrix that is being proposed by the applicant is the FlexTerra product that will cap and insulate a native seed blend, providing long-lasting and sufficient erosion control until the created slopes that are treated with that bonded fiber matrix are revegetated. This treatment is considered superior to basic hydroseed applications, and all created slopes must be irrigated until native growth is established. All right, so that wraps up the overview of the CUP amendment. The next 15 or so slides focus on the analysis of the CUP amendment that was provided to the Planning Commission in relation to our code standards that govern development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges, and then also the applicable CUP findings. In terms of the standards in Sparks Municipal Code that do govern development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges, they're listed on this slide, and from an order perspective, we're going to go through C through G first, and then come back to the design policies, because there's a fair few conditions to discuss that were recommended by staff to implement those design policies. Looking first at the grading standards. Here code establishes the total area of a site that can be disturbed based on a slope analysis. You'll recall that the development agreement exempts 136 acres that were disturbed due to mining operations and roadway construction from the maximum disturbance area calculations for Five Ridges. The remaining part of Five Ridges, where natural slopes are present, totals a bit over 285 acres in size, and code limits the area that can be disturbed in that part of the site to a maximum of 161.69 acres. And as you can see with this table, the proposed disturbance area for natural slopes is less than what is allowed per code, with this 157.93 acres proposed. Also, when the proposed disturbance area for natural slopes is added to this 136 acres that have already been disturbed, this totals 293.93 acres. That is less than the 298 acres allowed per the development agreement, and so we do have compliance with that portion of the development agreement. Moving on to code standards D through G for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. For D, erosion and sedimentation control standards address temporary erosion and sedimentation measures during construction, and then also required bonding. Compliance with these standards is required prior to the issuance of a grading permit. For E, areas that will be revegetated or landscaped to maintain created slopes are required by Condition 4 to achieve 90% ground cover within 3 years. For F, required open space must remain undisturbed. Condition 5 requires the applicant to demonstrate with each grading permit that the appropriate amount of open space is being preserved. Additionally, G identifies hilltops and ridgelines that have been identified as significant by the city. This section of code requires additional development setbacks from these features. However, within the Five Ridges project site, there are no hilltops or ridgelines that have been designated as significant by the city. Circling back, as promised, to our design policies for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges. Design Policy 1 that you can see on this slide requires a site be analyzed for its design constraints, and it relates to the maximum amount of area that can be disturbed on slopes with gradients between 15 and 30%. This was previously discussed when we walked through the grading disturbance table, and the CUP amendment does comply with maximum disturbance area limitations. The second design policy indicates aesthetic degradation of the site must be limited, as well as erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards. To address this design policy, there are multiple new or amended conditions that were recommended to the Planning Commission by staff. To limit aesthetic degradation of the site, conditions 8 and 10 would require retaining walls and the Village 9 guardrail be designed to blend into the surrounding natural landscape to ensure that those features aren't visually obtrusive. And then to further limit aesthetic degradation, condition 9 would require open view fencing for villages 8, 9, and 10, with the lots located on the perimeter of those villages. To limit erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards, condition 7 would require final erosion control and sedimentation transport designs be approved by the city engineer with each final map application. However, it's important to note that the city engineer has reviewed the final master drainage study for Five Ridges and the proposed slope stabilization methods that were reviewed on the previous slide for created slopes, and determined that the proposed infrastructure improvements and slope treatments will limit erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards. Notably, as designed, the drainage system, which consists of storm channels, pipes, sedimentation basins, detention ponds, that whole system is designed to reduce peak stormwater flow rates by 50% and increase sediment volume capacity on the site. Design Policy 3 indicates that long slopes with sharp transitions are generally undesirable. As discussed, graded slopes with a gradient of 2 to 1 or 50% are proposed at the perimeter of the Five Ridges project site. So in other words, that's the exterior slopes associated with Village 1B at the south side of the site, and then those exterior slopes associated with villages 8, 9, and 10 in the northern portion of the site. These fill slopes span between, again, approximately 15 and 90 feet in elevation, and they will be visible from public roadways or from properties located to the north of the Five Ridges project site. The grading plans that were submitted with the CUP amendment indicate that the slopes will be recontoured and then the toe of the slopes will be rounded. And both of those techniques generally help created slopes to resemble natural landforms. However, due to the length and then the visibility of the proposed created slopes, staff recommended that condition 3 be amended to require additional design techniques that provide additional horizontal relief. These include the use of variable slope gradients, so that would be a mix of 2 to 1, 3 to 1, and 4 to 1 slopes, or possibly embedding natural boulders within the created slopes. Design Policy 4 that you can see on this slide indicates that buildings should be designed and placed on the site so as to visually complement each other and natural landforms. It also requires that the placement of buildings on or near hilltops or ridges show a high degree of sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact. This design policy does not prohibit the construction of homes or buildings on or near hilltops and ridgelines. Instead, it's that sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact, which is subjective, must be demonstrated through the project as it's designed, and then also the conditions placed on it. More directly, this design policy indicates that the visual impact of development needs to be mitigated, not eliminated. To mitigate the visual impact of homes and structures constructed on ridgelines in a manner that shows that sensitivity to the terrain and its visual impact, staff recommended that condition 6 be amended to require development at the perimeter of Five Ridges in terms of villages 8, 9, and 10, which is the area that you can see highlighted in pink on this map. First, increase the minimum rear yard setback for 2-story structures from 20 feet to 30 feet. And then second, limit the height of detached accessory structures and detached accessory dwelling units to 15 feet. The requirement for using earth tone colors and roof lines that are designed to blend with the surrounding natural environment that it is currently in condition 6 in its adopted form, that would remain in place. So
It's a $10 fine.
So, as recommended, the new requirements for Condition 6 that are shown on this slide would reduce the visual impact of development by setting back the tallest buildings, again, those two-story structures, farther from the property line than required by standard code, and then limiting the height of those detached accessory structures and dwellings in the future that may be constructed in rear yards. Transitioning with this slide into our general conditional use permit findings, the first of which is compliance with the comprehensive plan. Here, the proposed CUP amendment would enable development on the full Five Ridges project site. This supports Goal H2 and Policy H2 by facilitating a mix of housing types on that site in compliance with the city's adopted comprehensive plan land use designations. The adopted development agreement details how city services will be provided to this site at acceptable service levels in compliance with Policy CF1. And Policy RC30 indicates that development should preserve and protect significant natural amenities and unique features. Examples include rock outcroppings, drainage ways. While some rock outcroppings in the northwest portion of the Five Ridges project site will be disturbed, the CUP amendment preserves rock outcroppings located in the western portion of the Five Ridges project site. Staff also analyzed Policy RC28 in the staff report that was provided to the Planning Commission. However, after the Planning Commission denied the CUP amendment, the city received a policy rejection letter from the Five Ridges Development Company. This letter rejects the application of two policies that were added or amended when the City Council certified updates to its comprehensive plan in March of this year. This rejection is permitted by Section 2.2D of the Development Agreement that allows the master developer to reject new or amended rules, regulations, policies, and ordinances within 90 days of their application. The rejection was filed in a timely manner, and it has been accepted by the city. The first policy that is rejected is Policy RC28. That policy relates to development on slopes between 15 and 30%. The second is an amendment to Policy C4 that relates to sidewalks. However, the sidewalk policy does not apply to the CUP amendment under consideration today. However, it's important to note that in denying the CUP amendment, the Planning Commission could not make finding C1, that is compliance with the comprehensive plan, stating that the CUP amendment was not consistent with Policy RC28. So with the rejection of Policy RC28, the City Council should not consider that policy in review of this appeal. However, from a practical perspective, this policy has no effect on the code standards for development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges, or the conditions that were recommended to comply with that section of code. Ultimately, Policy RC28 was added to the comprehensive plan to conform with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan in a manner that supported the city's existing and adopted code. While not identified in their denial motion, the Planning Commission did discuss alternate policies in the comprehensive plan that the CUP amendment may not comply with, and those are policies that the City Council can consider, and Mr. Ornelas is going to go into more detail on those policies later on in this presentation. Finding C2 requires compatibility with existing or permitted uses of adjacent properties. Lands to the west, east, and south of the Five Ridges project site are currently vacant. The lands to the south are designated commercial, and they could be developed with generally commercial or residential uses in the future. The lands to the west and east of Five Ridges are designated for open space and will remain so. Land to the north is characterized by large lot properties between 10 and 20 acres in size, and most of them are developed with existing residences. Development of the Five Ridges project site with residential uses does conform to the comprehensive plan land use categories that are adopted on this site, which were found to be compatible with adjacent property designations and uses. The conditions of approval that were recommended to the Planning Commission are intended to mitigate the visual impact of development on slopes, hilltops, and ridges, and increase the compatibility with surrounding uses, both existing and future. Moving on to finding C3, which has two components. They're interrelated. The first is the potential impairment of natural resources, and then the second is the total population that available natural resources can support without unreasonable impairment. Natural resources that support population growth generally include potable water resources, treated effluent, and air resources. Little impairment to natural resources that support population growth is anticipated because the CUP amendment proposes to increase the area of grading disturbance to accommodate the units that are permitted in the development agreement. While steep slopes are part of the environment, they are not natural resources necessary to support population growth. For steep slopes, the comprehensive plan and Sparks Municipal Code governs land disturbance and the appearance of created slopes and buildings. In considering this policy and code framework, the Planning Commission denied the CUP amendment based on noncompliance with finding C3, finding the request will impair natural resources. While not included in the Planning Commission's denial motion, there was additional discussion of policies in the comprehensive plan that relate to natural resources that the City Council can, again, also consider, and Mr. Ornelas will go over those in more detail. Moving on to finding C4, which focuses on how identified impacts of the project are addressed. Here, staff identified ridgeline development, fencing, and the maintenance access road on the north side of Village 9 as project impacts. The conditions for these impacts were previously discussed primarily with the design policies, but again, the conditions proposed by staff are intended to mitigate the visual impact of development, not eliminate it. The adequacy of how those conditions mitigate the visual impact of development is subjective, and the council may choose to modify those conditions as they see fit. Finding C5 requires public notice be given in compliance with code and state law. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal, and 46 mailed notices were provided to property owners within 1,000 feet of the Five Ridges project site for both the April 15th and the May 6th Planning Commission meetings. For the April 15th Planning Commission meeting, 11 emails and 2 phone calls were received in opposition to the project. 6 of those emails were read into the record during the public hearing, and then 3 members of the public provided individual comment through Zoom, as we were virtual at that time. For the May 6th meeting, there were 78 emails and 2 phone calls received in opposition to the CUP amendment. 62 of those emails were read into the record during the public hearing, and then we had 1 individual public comment through Zoom. Similarly, for today's public hearing, public notice was also provided consistent with code and state law. We had notice published in the Reno Gazette Journal on June 16th, and then 46 notices again mailed to property owners within 1,000 feet of the site, and those were mailed out on June 11th. As of today, and that would be noon today, city staff has received 58 written comments in opposition to the CUP amendment under consideration today with this appeal. In terms of questions and concerns, there were various questions and concerns raised by the Planning Commission during the public hearing that was first held on April 15th. And you can see the topics that were listed as concerns by the Planning Commission on this slide. With the continuation of the CUP amendment request from April 15th to May 6th, to allow for the applicant to prepare and provide supplemental visual materials, staff did directly respond to these comments in detail in an addendum to the Planning Commission staff report, and those same responses are provided as Exhibit 7 to the City Council staff report. With written and spoken public comments, we had members of the public also raising various concerns that you can see listed by topic on this slide. Some of these topics are engineering related, such as stormwater runoff and sedimentation transport, rockery wall design, and revegetation success to stabilize created slopes. Others focus on ridgeline preservation and the applicable policies and code standards for ridgeline development. Again, staff directly responded to these comments in an addendum to the Planning Commission staff report, and those same responses are attached to the City Council staff report. So with that, I'll wrap up the overview of the CUP amendment and the analysis of the applicable code standards and CUP findings that was presented to the Planning Commission. Do want to iterate that after analyzing the applicable code standards and findings, staff did recommend approval of the CUP amendment with 10 conditions. And with that, I'll hand the presentation, the remainder of it, back over to Mr. Ornelas.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. So again, Ms. Reed has reviewed the staff analysis of the CUP amendment request, including the staff recommendation to the Planning Commission, and she summarized the public comment provided to the Planning Commission. I'm now going to review the Planning Commission's decision and go into further detail regarding the City Council's alternatives for action on this appeal. So the Planning Commission denied the request based on two findings. The first is finding C1, which is compliance with the comprehensive plan. In deciding to deny the CUP amendment, the Planning Commission cited as part of the approved motion that it could not make finding C1 because the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan policy RC28 that limits the amount of grading on steep slopes. For the reason previously discussed by Ms. Reed, if the City Council decides to affirm the Planning Commission's decision, the Council should not rely on policy RC28 to do so. The Planning Commission also expressed concern that the CUP amendment is inconsistent with Comprehensive Plan Policy H2 that promotes a variety of housing types because more single-family homes in the expanded disturbance area would not add housing diversity to the project. This concern was not, however, incorporated into the approved motion for denial of the CUP amendment. Planning Commission also decided that it could not make finding C3, stating as part of the motion it approved to deny the CUP amendment that the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan based on the impairment of natural resources. Members of the Planning Commission also discussed, but did not again incorporate into the motion for denial of the CUP amendment, that the request conflicts with comprehensive plan goal RC1, which calls for conservation and protection of natural resources needed to provide for current and future residents, businesses, and visitors. Policy RC30, which requires new development to preserve and protect significant natural amenities, unique features such as rock outcroppings and drainage ways, and other natural features. And lastly, policy RC31, which calls on the city to work with federal, state, local, and private entities to promote the protection of and minimize potential impacts on cultural resources within the city's boundaries. Okay, so that sums up the Planning Commission's decision to deny the conditional use permit. I'm now going to present to you the City Council's alternatives for taking action on this appeal. The first alternative is to affirm the decision of the Planning Commission and deny the CUP, essentially as they voted on it. While technically available to the City Council, again, staff is advising you not to exercise this alternative as the Planning Commission cited Comprehensive Plan Policy RC28 as the basis for not being able to make that finding. And the applicant has subsequently rejected application of policy RC28 to the CUP in accordance with their rights under the development agreement. Alternative 2 is to modify the decision of the Planning Commission and deny the CUP amendment based on alternate and/or additional findings. Should the City Council be interested in this alternative, the motion that you make should specify the alternate findings, and staff is available to advise you regarding alternate findings for denial. Alternative 3 is to reverse the decision of the Planning Commission and approve the CUP amendment with 10 conditions of approval as recommended by staff to the Planning Commission. So essentially, alternative 3 is staff's original recommendation to the Planning Commission for approval with 10 conditions of approval. Alternative 4 would be to reverse the decision of the Planning Commission and approve the CUP amendment with modified conditions of approval. So again, you are hearing this de novo. You have the set of 10 proposed conditions of approval, but in the event that you wanted to change one or more of those conditions, either modify them, subtract conditions, or add conditions, that is an option that is available to you. And staff is available to advise you regarding additional conditions of approval should you be interested in pursuing this alternative. Alternative 5 would be to remand the case back to the Planning Commission with direction. You should specify the direction. And with that, Mayor Lawson, members of the City Council, staff concludes its presentation and is available for questions.
Okay, we want to take the appellant now, or? what are the
It's
questions?
your choice. You can ask staff questions now if you'd like. You can ask staff questions after the appellant has spoken. You can do both. It's,
What's the pleasure of the council?
Let's hear from
Here, okay, let's bring the appellant up then and we'll hear. Perfect.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lawson and fellow city members here. I'm Blake Smith. I'm the developer of Five Ridges project that's under appeal here with the CUP. I think that Sienna and Armando did a wonderful job of going through the technical aspects and the reporting that was presented to the city planning commission. And I don't think that we need to, excuse me, revisit that, but I thought that I'd come up. I have our development team here with me, Scott Christie, Mike Riley, my son Blake Jr., and also we've flown in Jeff House, our geologist from Atlanta, to address some of the presentation that we'll go through here. But from what I wanted to do was just give a history of this. I know there's been a lot of comments and other items that were addressed or have been presented or stated in here, but the Five Ridges projects, if you recall, we started 6 years ago in the public forum. We've probably had over 50 different public hearings on this, including going to regional planning and planning commission and planning board 4 times now at this point. From our standpoint, this has been aired within the public. I think that you'll hear residents here, or possibly you've begun to hear residents here saying that this is something that wasn't aired or wasn't shown. Different land plans, the land plans have been consistent. I think you saw from Mr. Cole today, the original land plan, and then we did acquire 34 additional acres to the property. With that, we went through the entire entitlement process again with annexation, city master plan amendments, going to regional planning commission, regional planning governing board, all airing this out. That was as recently as September of 2020 last year. Again, during those hearings, there was no opposition, there was no comments with it. It went passed through. Now that we're under construction, we're having a lot of comments presented to us, and I think we are sympathetic to those, but I think that we are trying to implement the development agreement that we've all worked together with for 6 years here. The CUP is a technical aspect of the development agreement. We are implementing that. We're asking for permission through the CUP to continue to implement the development agreement here. It's something that I think that the project itself will be a true addition to the community. I think that we are bringing a lot of different product lines into it, including part of the missing middle. The aspects of it and I'm going to address kind of a technical aspect of it. One of the key things with this CUP is that, as you saw, we've already approved probably 90% of the site for grading. This last 19 acres that we're adding to it is still in the development agreement land plan. We're not expanding it, but we are requesting for the final part. Those villages 8, 9, and 10 are now sold, is why we're in front of you here today. We're trying to implement the final grading with that. But the one thing that's very critical from our standpoint, from a development part, is that the site is a balanced site. It's a site that we have designed through the engineers here that we will have no import or export to the site. It's a large site, it's a large project. Without the approval of the CUP, we would go out of balance as far as our grading in here. We've not taken the exercise to discover how much that is, but it would be a very material amount that we would most likely be importing substantial amounts of soils into here, and it's a consideration that I'd like to put in front of you. This site is an integrated site. It's not like there's little pockets to it. It is a fully integrated grading site on that. But with that, I think what I'd like to do is introduce Jeff House. He's going to walk through a quick presentation that addresses two of the critical items, the view shed items, and then also the hydrology aspects of it. And then I'd like to come back and give some concluding comments, if I could.
Mayor Lawson, council, I will try to be as brief as I can.
Yeah, give us your name for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Jeffrey House.
Thank you.
I am one of several consultants on the team. My role for 3 years has just been stormwater and sedimentation analysis and control. And then as of April, I was asked to provide some 3D renderings of what the hillside would look like with the homes on top. And so I'm just going to jump right in. We'll try not to speak in techno-jumbo speak, but go through this. We've already seen this exhibit about 5 times today, so I'm going to skip that. We all know how the site lays. We all know that this is the expanded area. It was all the green was approved previously. What we were asked to do in April was to take a look at what the ridge line was going to look like from 3 observation points. And what that entails is a lot of GIS exercise of intersecting planes and intersecting horizons and then adding in 1-story and 2-story houses along the ridge line with the proper setbacks to reduce the impact on the view. You have a map here, Dolores Drive, Maria Way, Katrina Way, and Star Hill Way. Everything topographically was prepared digitally. We didn't trespass on anybody's land, that sort of thing. So we came up with a couple of exhibits. One shows the observation points that was required to be a part of a public right-of-way. This is the northern line, so this is pointing south, this is pointing north this way. And then what we do in our analysis is called a bare earth analysis. That gets where you're just looking at the ground surface so that trees are not impeding your view, cars, houses, out structures, and so forth. Same observation point, locations as before, just in a different setting and presentation. Plus, I think it looks cooler, to be honest. And what we did from these observation points is we panned left and we scanned across east to west and looked at what we were going to be seeing on the ridge line. And from the first observation point, you see very little. Second observation point, as we're panning across the west, and then as we get to the western field area, you see parts of all the homes. From observation point 2, again, we're looking across the east of the site to the west of the site, looking south from the 3 observation points. And again, you see parts of the homes. And then again, from observation point 3, similar. It looks like that they all could be interchanged, but they're different in every way. These are 3D, highly scientific drawings. And so what I had worked on, my company had worked on for 3 years was the sedimentation and the stormwater modeling. And we can say without a shadow of a doubt that we have reduced the sediment volume. We have reduced the amount of peak flow that is coming off the site by the on-site controls and how the site was designed. To give you an idea, a lot of people have the misunderstanding that we only analyze the site itself, and Five Ridges sits in this area right here. But we actually had to analyze way off-site to gather all the water that's going to flow to our points of interest. Speaking of points of interest, one of the things about sediment transport is that we had to calibrate our model based on real data. And there's a concrete sediment structure on the east side of Pyramid Highway in which we had data that the maintenance crews had cleaned out over a period of over a decade. And we had that volume of sediment that had come off of Five Ridges site, this whole watershed, over the course of time, that we were able to tie that to storm events, use NEXRAD Doppler, use a number of tools at our disposal, the universal soil loss equation, we use HEC HMS modeling, we used a lot of advanced techniques to come up with just the calibration of our sediment soil parameters in order to size a potential detention facility in coordination with NDOT and the city of Sparks at the corner of Dolores Drive, on the south corner of Dolores Drive. So we not only analyze all this area as I'm showing here, but we also analyze the area over to Dolores Drive just to size this sediment basin. But what that exercise did was allow us to go into the nitty-gritty details of sizing the sediment ponds required to control the sediment off of Five Ridges. And that was very helpful when we designed the temporary sediment basins as well as the permanent sediment ponds. And so if we look at the north end of the site, a number of people have suggested that the flow is going to increase or the volume is going to increase. Well, that's just not true. If you look at pre-Five Ridges, your sub-basin areas, or the areas that we're going to drain to the north, coming from the site, look like this. Whereas with development, these areas have become smaller because anything in the streets is being captured, transported, and stays in the middle of the site. So we've reduced flows significantly at every natural discharge point going to the north. As we go from west to east, same thing, we have the existing subbasins, and then we have the proposed subbasins. Big difference in area, and again, we drop the peak flows, or the amount of water that's going to flow off the site at the natural discharge point at this location. And I invite anybody to check our work. I would enjoy that, actually. So to sum it all up in one very busy frame here, I'll go through it. So we have all of our northern property line, which we have reduced peak flow significantly at each of the natural discharge points, Village 10, Village 9. We have two sediment basins in orange right here and right here that will stay in place. And they have provided 7 to 8 times the amount of volume capacity for sediment storage, so that all that area that I talked about earlier that is coming onto our site is staying on our site with very little of it going down into the city's infrastructure. More importantly, our two offsite points going off to the east to Pyramid Highway area, we have decreased the amount of peak flow by over half. So we are detaining, in these 4 detention ponds in blue, we are over detaining everything that we can. During construction, we are providing all these temporary sediment basins in red that keeps the sediment in check during a storm event. And I would like to remind the council that on June 3rd, the city experienced a storm near our area that we did the frequency analysis, and we found that it to be a 200-year storm event. I don't recall a lot of equipment cleaning up mud off of highways or going into anybody's yards and cleaning up debris. So this design is as good of a design as we could come up with, and we've been doing this for 45 years. So with that, we'll answer any questions. I know it's an exciting topic for a lot of people to talk about hydrology and hydraulics and sediment. I love talking about it.
Yes, hello, thank you for being here, I appreciate it. So the question I have, I get all this, so the question, so we dig into some of these hills, so you study what's there, how do we know what's gonna happen? So after you dig in these holes, now we've unearthed area, and say we get a large flood event, the homes that are down there, the people are concerned, which are, concerns are very
Absolutely.
fair. And so this is where, really, one of the areas we sit going, help us understand, because obviously we have a role to play here of trying to make sure we mitigate those things. So how do we approach this during construction and then after?
That's a very important question. During construction is when everybody is at the most vulnerable as far as the contractors, the site, to keep it as secured and so forth. We have 20 temporary sediment basins that serve to collect the sediment, attenuate the flows, or hold back the water to allow the residence time of the sediment to drop out before it's passed ahead downhill. Plus, we have the 4 detention ponds in blue that during construction serve as a very large sediment pond with restricted plates during construction until the site is stabilized. So between the temporary sediment basins and the permanent detention ponds, this site is buttoned down. Plus, we have the 2 permanent sediment basins that's taken all that flow from off-site and some on-site and is holding it and choking it down to a level that is way pre-development. So everybody is in better shape with this project in place than they are right now.
So I'm not an engineer, so I admit that 100%. So how about on the side?
Now, I can't see just where you're pointing.
How about
so
on the
you're-
north side?
Okay, on
So
the north
you're
side.
8, 9, and 10. So on that north side, where I see up top, we have sediment areas that collect. But how about on the other side? Because that's where some of our people in the
Well, yeah,
audience live.
so the way the project is designed is that everything is gonna slope back to the road, travel down the roads, down the collectors, the collection roads, into the detention ponds, and along the way, as necessary, into the temporary sediment ponds. We are gonna be disturbing the slopes slightly at a more steep slope than what is there naturally in a few key but small locations. But if you go back to existing conditions, the ridge line actually sits back in this area. So we are actually flattening out the slope and then just having a short section. And if you look at the net gain, you are actually reducing the velocities over the course of distance as you get to the property line.
Well, and Jeff, I think, let me maybe put it a little bit in layman terms. I think what Jeff is expressing here is that, number one, when the project is completed, all the flows to the north will be substantially less. I think he showed you going through that. What he's showing you with the temporary detention basins here is that while we're constructing it, we're also doing that same retention on it to stop with that. It's designed, as he was mentioning, the hill slopes down. This, when we're done, is going to slope more back towards us to minimize that. But I think, Councilman, one of the things that's been brought up to my attention on it was the concern of, well, what happens if we have a substantial storm?
Yep.
Something that overflows some of this, or there's an occurrence that is beyond what we thought that we had budgeted for. And I think I want to pledge to you, the council, and the neighbors that are here, that if there was a failure in some way of this, and there was some damages or occurrences to landscaping or yards or homes or anything else, our firm would come in and indemnify. We would go ahead and repair or fix those things. I don't think that's the occurrence, but I do want to alleviate some fears here that we are a substantial firm. We will be putting millions of dollars into landscaping and parks up here. If something did occur with a neighbor for some reason, we would step up and move in to help or repair or better whatever happened there. I think I want to go back. Our family's been in this, has been here 99 years. I just noticed, I forgot, my grandfather was on the city council in Ward 5 from 1947 to 1951. And I'll bet you he thought some things changed as it came forward here. But anyhow, we're neighbors, we're locals here. It is something that if something failed from all of our intelligence here, we would step up and repair that for everyone. And I pledge that to you, and I pledge it to the neighbors that are here also.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, you want to do your closing remarks?
No, I think that's it. I want to emphasize that it's a wonderful project here. This is just the final step in part of the development agreement is this technical permit called the CUP for us to finish it off. I don't think there should be any surprises in here. This has been in the public forum for so long, 6 years, and I'm estimating probably 50 public hearings. We're under construction now, and I think it has more visibility or people are seeing different things, and that may be some of the comments that are coming up here. But this has been aired. It's something that we are not changing. It is what's in the development agreement, and we're just implementing it at this point. So with that, any questions? We're here for any questions during or after public comment also.
I would like to add that you had a 200-year storm event occurrence interval that occurred on June 3rd of this year. And there wasn't a lot of damage, any that I'm aware of, out in that area. So this site is designed to handle large storm events and reduce flow. But I understand all the concerns and so forth. I just want everybody to know that we have gone to every effort to make it much less in proposed conditions than it was in existing conditions, such that you're better off with the site in place than not in place.
Ms. Spivey?
Yeah, I just had one question. On the pictures, and either of you can answer, on the 3D pictures that you showed us, that what houses from, if you're sitting on the northern observation point, looking at those homes, were those homes with the 30-foot or 20-foot setback in those pictures?
The one-story homes had the 20-foot setback. The two-story homes had the 30-foot setback from the rear property line. So as you're looking at these, we alternated them as often as we could with the various lot lines.
So only the two stories had the 30-foot setback, and the one stories only had 20. Okay, and any accessory dwelling units, or that's just the height limitation that they're looking at, that one of the conditions that staff asked for was if you had, in the backyards, if you had accessory dwelling, is that if people choose to add that, that's not coming with the home?
That is not coming with the home.
Okay.
And we pledge within there the height limitations if they did develop that within it.
Okay, but none of them are being built with it, that's an option?
No.
For homeowners, okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions from the council? Okay. Well, this is a public hearing, and so we're going to open it up to public hearing now and start off with. Yeah, we will, after we do public hearing. Madam Clerk, do you want to talk to us about public comment? Where we are?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. As Ms. Reed had stated, we did receive 58 emails of public comment. Those emails have been added to the public comment record and are located on your agenda item below number 16. It is titled Public Comment from 11.1. So those were everything that was received prior to 12 p.m. today. Any additional public comment that may have been received after 12 p.m. today will still be added to the record under item 12. It just will not occur until after the meeting.
Okay, with that, we're gonna go to the comment cards. We're gonna have Rock Cole, followed by Dan, I think it says Price.
83 pages, but not comments.
Can I have the projector one more time, please? I'm gonna start my own time here because I don't see the screen. Is that all right?
Fine with you, we'll still remind you.
All right, when do I start?
Right, when, as soon as you say your name.
My name is Rock Cole. Thank you for hearing this, council. The developer and staff has stated several times that it is 19.8 acres of additional disturbance. If you look at this map, it's very clear it's in the brown. We questioned that, and so we secured a professional engineer to do a takeoff on that plan, and he came up with 35 acres of additional disturbance. But the most glaring fact of this finding is the ratio. It is only 14 acres of buildable land. There is 21 acres of hillside scarring. Nobody's talked about RC 32, minimize hillside scarring. How can 21 acres, when you're only producing 14 acres of buildable land, possibly be considered? I would call that maximizing hillside scarring. And I will give this to the clerk. My biggest concern is sediment load transport. I've been in this business, superintendent for Atlas Contractors for 24 years. I've been in this business a long time, I understand. Hydro-Seed doesn't work. I know bonded fiber matrix is some kind of miracle, but it will degrade. I don't know who establishes 90% coverage, but after you stop watering it, we live in a desert. The only thing that grows on the side of that hill is sagebrush, pinyons, and cheatgrass. It will degrade. It will turn back to dirt, just like all the slopes in DeAndre I have. The only thing that's growing on those slopes is rabbit brush and sage is blown in over the years. And when, those are 3-to-1 slopes with benches and ditches. Would you guys run a slope, a 90-foot slope down to the back of your backyards? Can I get the clock, please? I lost mine. My biggest concern is a major event during construction, and if it flowed down, it would be a major problem. It would put mud in our yard. I have a video showing clear water that comes off that in a major storm. I showed Christopher the video today, and a lot of neighbors have the same video of clear water. That hillside's been rained on for thousands of years. It doesn't have any sediment left. It flows clear. When you build these massive slopes, there will be erosion. It will come down. And if Mr. Smith wants to cover us, I think he should give us some kind of a 10-year plan, because it's going to be an ongoing thing. Any major storm is going to devastate our yards.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Dan Price, followed by Linda Davis.
Hi, my name is Dan Price, and it just happens to be that the one point where everybody's talking about the 90 feet of slope comes down on my property. And I can't see how you can change the flow coming off that property and direct it to the south. It's got to come my way. So by raising, that's all fill. There's no steps or anything. It comes directly down. As far as the 200-year rainstorm that happened a few days ago, that was nothing. We've had 18 inches of water coming down our, we've got a dry creek bed that fills up, when we get a flash flood. So, I mean, this wasn't anything. The same concern that Rock had, I have the same one. Once we do the clearing and grubbing on that hill slope, that thing's gonna be open for who knows long, 2-3 years before they get hydroseeding on it. There's gotta be something in place to take care of that. I understand there's gonna be silt fence and all that, but if we get a major storm, it'll wash that right out. And I'm like Rock too, you know, if, how long down the road are we gonna be covered for it? I mean, typically in this area, we get a lot of weather. We get a major storm year every 10 years. We're in drought years for the next 5. So we're looking at least 5 years before we get any major storms coming through where we can actually see what's gonna happen. You know, so, you know, as far as the sediment stuff, you know, it's gonna be a problem. We saw it down on Pyramid, you know, we see it all the time. We see it over Cala de Plata, so it's obviously, you know, a concern for us. You know, I don't know other than that. So I'd rather see you support the planning commission and, you know, shut this down. So I foresee some problems down the road, you know, for us and, you know, everybody along that slope. Those are pretty steep gradients. They should be stepped and everything else. And I didn't see any catch basins or anything else to direct the flow. You know, it comes right down on us. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Linda Davis, followed by Nancy, is it Danner? Thank you.
Mayor Lawson, council members, I am Linda Davis. So why does that ridge line have to be torn down? That's what I ask. In the beginning of this project, as he said, there's been many public meetings. I can remember asking, so what's happening on that north ridge line? Oh, nothing to see here. No, we're doing phase 1 down there on Highland. Nothing to see here. That ridge line, that's fine, it's good. So we kind of relax. Well, then it comes around again. They say it's all laid out in the approved plans. Like I sit down and I read their approved plans. For one thing, I don't get notifications of these meetings because I live 5 parcels away on the north, and our parcels are at least 500 foot in depth. So all you're notifying is 2 people that live along there, 2 houses. You're not getting any further away than that, so we don't get it. So I found it amusing, Mr. Smith, he confirmed what I said to my husband this morning. I look up at that ridge line and I said, why does he have to tear that ridge line down? I said, it's because he needs that dirt to fill his project. And he confirmed that. So his lack of planning should not fall on our shoulders. So as I said, I live north on a 10-acre parcel. Don't receive the notifications, but I hear the bulldozers every day. I see them tearing the ground down. And I see that when they do that sloping right into the backyards of my neighbors, that whole northern ridge is going to be different. And none of us know how that's going to pan out. So today, you've received some factual opposition. You're going to receive a lot of emotional opposition. And all of this has been recorded at many other meetings. And I hate beating that same drum. But when does it stop? Why do we have to cave to the desires of a developer that he pushes to expand, he finagles to get his way, and then he convinces officials just to disregard our quality of life, the safety of our rural area, and the environmental impact to our properties? Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Danner, followed by Mike Eastman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you hearing my concerns. My name is Nancy Danner. I live on the corner of Dolores and Marie, and I've been there since 1983. It's unfortunate that I'm addressing a council that doesn't represent me because we don't get to vote for any of you. We live in the county, and yet you, sitting up here, determine our quality of life, and where we have chosen to live is in your hands. I think, like everybody, my concern is the runoff. On any given year, we've had a lot of runoff, and Dolores, the ditch that runs along Dolores has washed out many driveways over the past several years. It runs down to the corner of Pyramid Way. A couple of years ago, there was so much damage down there that they had to close the highway. And at a great cost to the county, I'm assuming the county, to repair that, it still is not fixed. If there is another huge rainfall that will again go down through that drainage ditch and land on the corner of Pyramid and Dolores. I'm worried about the natural terrain. I'm sure that all of you guys remember the mudslide on Slide Mountain a number of years ago in Carson City, Highway 50. That closed a major highway. It killed one person. It destroyed numerous homes. There were 1.4 million cubic yards of rock. Lower Canyon had debris flow of 30 feet high. 400 acre-feet of material deposited at the bottom, and 7 million gallons of water flowed downhill. Now, I realize that we're not going to see that kind of a landslide on the northern slope of Five Ridges, but trust me and trust the ones that have lived out there long enough that there will be landslides, there will be mudslides, there will be sediment, because there's nothing to hold it back. There's nothing there. It's nothing but, there's nothing. How many of you gone out there to look? Have you walked along that ridge? Have you walked up there? Mr. Tahir has. You've gone out there, but I don't know about the rest of you. Have you ever looked at that? Have you gone out there? I don't know. So I'm just, who's going to take responsibility? He says he is. He says he's our neighbor. I don't know if he's my neighbor. My neighbors are sitting back here in opposition to this, taking the terrain off of that land. So anyway, I think it's time that we put it to rest and stop the bullying from a developer who can't and won't take no for an answer because he wants more. We're not opposed to development, people. We are not. There's development all around us, and we encourage it. We like it. But at risk of our way of life, is it fair for him to come in and want to destroy that? It's up to you guys. You're the ones that have to answer that question for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, Mike Eastman, followed by, is it Jarl Grunseith? Did I get that name right?
How do I turn this on?
She'll turn it on for you. I'm sorry, I mark you in opposition then. Thank you. And I'm going to go with Kim, I suppose you don't want to speak either? Okay. I'll mark you in opposition also. And then Wayne Peterson? Patterson, thank you. It's hard for me to read sometimes. Okay.
Well, that worked far better than I thought it would. I'm still Mike Eastman. Thank you for hearing me. Just another 3 minutes of time. I live right in that middle section, right there. Rock lives over there. Dan Price earlier lives right there. I'm going to show you a picture from this bottom south boundary of what the terrain currently looks like, and then we'll come back and look at this. So that's standing very near that boundary. And that rock formation that you see on the upper right-hand side, the overhead image doesn't do a great job of it, but it's a very pretty rock outcropping, a very substantial amount. You can see in the foreground how much of that is a very gentle slope. It is a very easy walk up there to the section where you get to the rocks, and then it's very steep. That is reflected here on this map. I don't know if you can see the yellow, there are white lines, you guys have seen it on your pictures. There are white lines that show 10-foot increments that are well spaced out to indicate that very shallow area. The part that you see that is brown right in here, with little dashes. Those are 20-foot separations that are about a third the distance of those other 10-foot separations. So, and you saw it on Mr. House's displays, a couple of them that he panned by pretty quickly. When you look at Village 9 from any of those observation points, there's a slope that looks like about like that. That's where that's going in. And it ends right on my property line and Dan Price's property line. There's no way in the planet you can convince me that there's not a change of water flow off of that thing. And he has to run this right up to the edge of the back line of property lines right there, because that's where the houses start. So from there on down, there isn't any mitigation they can do for aesthetics, for water flow, because it has to be compacted right there, and it has to be that slope right there in our backyard. It runs, I mean, right there in off our property line, it runs straight up to the other side there. I want to point out that both the Washoe County Nuisance Code and the Washoe County Regional Drainage Plan recognize the rights of property owners at lower elevations to not have the quality and velocity of water, of flowing water, be changed in an adverse manner by a higher property owner. It is plainly obvious that water flowing down this long 2-to-1 fill slope will flow significantly faster than what it currently flows onto our backyards, and will increase the silt transport onto my property and will erode my property in its faster flowing state. Again, we look back at that, just very significant flows. Right now, water can run off the hillside and it kind of gently reaches a flat zone and can meander anywhere it wants to get off the hill. You throw this slope on it, it has no other place to go than straight down onto my property, start an erosion process. Your Planning Commission agonized over this request a CUP amendment for several weeks, and even expressed some reservation a year ago. They came to recognize the scope of the project has well surpassed its original promise to be a small enclave-type community that respects ridgelines, outcroppings, and steep slopes, and they unanimously rejected the applicant's request. Please follow the example and do the same. Thank you.
Sir. Wayne Patterson, followed by Barbara Eastman.
I have to have these to read.
Me too, for seeing far away.
My name is Wayne Patterson. For 24 years, my home has been 7325 Petrina Way. I, my neighbors, and the Planning Commission are unanimously opposed to Mr. Smith's appeal as presented. I thank the Planning Commissioners for their attention, endurance in hearing our opposition to this amendment. I also thank them for their integrity and fidelity to policies RC 28, 30, 31, and the Spark zoning code regulating slopes, hillsides, and ridges. From the planning staff presentation, RC 28 reads, limit disturbed area on slopes between 15 and 30% and promote hillside adaptive architectural techniques. The applicant's presentation shows the slope at the end of Mac Lane to be above 30%. The term mitigate was used throughout both presentations. You only have to mitigate something after you've created a problem that, in this instance, nature sorted out long ago. On a slope that steep, no matter how robust your mitigation efforts, there will be extensive sediment washed down into the drainage. The view from my front door, one of the most scenic spots in the valley, will be destroyed, and the scar will be visible for miles. RC 30 states, require new development to preserve and protect significant natural amenities, unique features, rock outcroppings, and drainage ways, and other natural features. Mr. Smith would mine the ridge and the rock outcroppings for fill to balance his project. How does that preserve these natural resources and comport with the zoning code that reads, the development shall be designed with consideration for limiting aesthetic degradation of the site, as well as erosion, sedimentation, and other hazards. I'll offer a quote from Commissioner Reed during the May 6th hearing. She stated, I'm finding it difficult to meet some of these findings. I feel like there's an impairment of our natural resources. I think there's a lot of disturbance that's going to occur in the development of our slopes, and I'm not comfortable with approving this amendment. I focused on the slopes, but the scarring across the hillside by gouging out an 1,800-foot-long access road is another affront to the idea that this project can somehow protect significant natural amenities and limit aesthetic degradation of the view from my front door and that of my neighbors near and miles away. It cannot. Mr. Smith wants to balance his project by mining the ridges and rock outcroppings for fill. I believe Christopher Dare captured the appropriate balance between growth and preservation of natural resources when he said, I believe without question, We are in the middle of some wonderful growth in Sparks. We need to have leaders in place to protect the things we cherish in Sparks, and we need to communicate that to the people. This is your opportunity to communicate to the people what a leader cherishes. I learned long ago there are very few things in life that cannot be taken from you. One thing that cannot be taken from you is your integrity. Only you can give that away. Our cherished Blue Sky Ridge was taken from us, replaced with a snaggletooth collection of adaptive architectural techniques. Please do not compound that mistake. Please deny this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Barbara Eastman, followed by Lou Doria. Lou, you got both marked. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll speak.
Thank you.
My name is Barbara Eastman. I live with my husband, who's already spoken. I fully agree with his statements and his sentiment, but I have some concerns of my own. The Planning Commission deferred the decision on this topic from April 15th to May 6th with the request that the applicant produce visual modeling to illustrate the intrusiveness of the ridgeline development and the impact of this current requested CUP. The results were presented in the meeting, and you have seen these images, but there's a couple problems with these images. The observation points were selected to be close to the ridgeline as possible, but still very low points relative to the proposed homes. With planning staff proposal, this with setbacks, angles, and allowed it to be, it showed you the least amount of possible impact to the viewer. If you're out there and you're at your property or at Pyramid Highway, you can see the destructiveness, or you'll be able to see the homes. The images only show the proposed homes. What you don't see are the ugly 2-to-1 fill slopes that are proposed along this ridge, nor do you see the horizontal road cuts into these fill slopes that runs almost a full mile halfway up the ridge. As you can imagine, it's not going to be very pretty. Although I found the images of the homes to be very obtrusive, it's clear that the images diminish the true impact. If you want to use these images at all, they need to be redone using observation points on Dolores Drive and up Pyramid Highway. I have a final question. With all the difficulties this developer has experienced in Somerset and the wide-ranging expensive lawsuits and bankruptcies that are still working their way through the legal system, why are you even considering allowing him to cut and fill on the very steep slopes over 30% to form what could end up being unstable building pads? It seems like you're asking for trouble, and that's what he's doing. He's saying, well, I'll pay for everything, I'll take care of what damage you do, but I think you'll find that the landowners in Somerset he has a different opinion that his time is, or his 8 years or 10 years is up, so he doesn't have to pay for the destruction of the failure. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lou Doria, followed by Leonard Danner. You got both marked also. Leonard, do you want to speak?
No.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to mark you in opposition.
Mayor Lawson, Christopher, how are you? And Charlene, good to see you. Cheryl, Charlene, good to see you again, and thank you for coming and doing what you did for the HOA. I'm Lou Doria. I'm speaking for myself, basically. However, I am the president of the HOA in Winfield Springs. I have 2,500 people, and I must tell you that when I walk my dog, I got stopped about all the time about this particular project. That's why I'm down here, even though it doesn't affect us directly. Let me take this from a different aspect. You saw a lot of technical knowledge out there, a lot of technical stuff. You guys don't know anything about that. You know that your group provided you with a technical background, that's who you rely on. I'm the president of the HOA, and I have a DRC committee that I rely on for technical and CCA operations. I would never, I have 5 people who say unanimously, this is no way to go. I would never turn that back, and neither would the rest of my board. If it's 3-2, we discuss it. 5-0, no good. So you're on, it's shaky ground for you guys. I mean, basically, you got to make the decision, but you don't have enough information. You got to
You got an expert. We have experts, engineering experts. I swear it was 200-year flood. You have enough water for 50 years. Well, all of a sudden, we didn't have enough water because the golf course took the water. Well, we didn't figure that in, that's another thing. And then as far as coming back and helping, we had, I know the neighbors will sound funny, Jeffrey Bum. He was a big contractor who left us with $100,000 worth of common area and swore on 10 Bibles he would be back. So we asked him to come back. He claimed bankruptcy, and that was the end of it. The HOA had to suck it up with extra assessments. So as far as what they say one thing, but will they back it up? For me, it's not happened. The only time it happened is when Harvey Whittemore came in and he had the Heartwood and he put out 225 houses, and then everybody was very upset over it. So he came back in, and Harvey was good enough to take 125 out. Now, I don't know why he needs the other 200 houses. Why is he doing that to the community when the opposition is overwhelming? How many people came up here and say, it's a great idea? I can't wait to see this happen. You're the ones that are gonna have to respond to the constituents. These guys, they have their own scene and scenario, what they wanna do. And I work with developers and I know the mentality. So I just want to leave you with a different aspect of this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Kyle Zurkowski, followed by Melinda Stillwell.
Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Kyle Zurkowski. I live at 7285 Petrina Way. I've resided there since 2000 and am the closest resident to the ridgetop disturbance, as I am high on the hillside against the north slope. Though I am distraught about what's happening to the ridge only 50 yards from my back patio, I feel bringing emotion into this speech will not outweigh cold, hard facts on why this amendment should not be granted. I, as well as others in this room, were witness to the promise made by Mike Riley at the initial proposal of the project that took place at the Sparks Library on June 25th, 2018, that the ridgetops were not to be disturbed. It's on record, and it was a blatant lie. By being misled, we were not fully prepared to contest the original plan of the CUP. Therefore, an easy approval in May or April of 2020. I do not object to more affordable housing in the area. I am in favor of responsible development, but it must be properly engineered. Planning Commission has approved development along the ridgeline and hillsides with the existing CUP. The site is very steep and requires large slopes to accommodate infrastructure for homes and an access road for sewer and storm drainage that traverses almost a half mile along the hillside. The International Building Code and city standards dictate how slopes are to be constructed. Every slope on the interior of this project is adhering to the standards except the slopes draining down from the north exterior onto the existing residence below. The slopes are not benched every 30 feet per standard and have no mitigation of water and sediment. All the drainage off the interior slopes has a 10-foot bench every 30 vertical feet with riprap lined ditches carrying the flow into detention ponds where sediment can settle before it reaches the city drain system. The Washoe County residents do have rights, and the Washoe County Nuisance Code 50.308.12 states, land that has been altered so as to cause or contribute to erosion, subsidence, or surface water drainage impacting public or private property is prohibited. Water does not respect the various rights of adjacent landowners as it flows and transports sediment onto lower properties. Once sediment has trespassed onto a lower property, it becomes a nuisance. The Truckee Rivers Regional Drainage Plan 402.2 Rule of Law says that the upper owner has no right to change the natural system of drainage to increase the burden on the lower parcel. It goes on to say that the volume or velocity cannot be increased on the downstream property by adding up to 90 vertical foot slopes with no benching and no cutoff ditches to capture the water every 30 feet and take it to a detention facility. The velocity will greatly be increased by the time it reaches the bottom of a 50% gradient slope and impacts the existing natural ground, causing erosion and sediment transport. The sediment has no choice but to trespass onto the lower parcel, and it's the reason that slopes on the interior of the project are being built to city standards. Why aren't the slopes on the Washoe County side being built the same? Would the city want a 90-foot slope come straight down into a residential backyard? I'm going with no. There's absolutely no need to approve a project that has imminent liability for such a small fraction of buildable land, and the additional 19 acres he's asking for are really 35, as well as will be proven in this meeting, and are in violation of RC 32. The developer and city have succeeded with this project, but this request on a site that is obviously not suitable for construction. I respectfully ask you to deny this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Melinda Stillwell, followed by, and I'm gonna mess up your name and I apologize, Diana Radicable Bracy. Is she not here? It says in opposition, and I wasn't sure if she wanted to speak or not. So it'll be John O. Menzler. He's gone also. She is also in opposition. Brandon Curtis? You will speak. Okay, thank you. You're good. Oh, okay. And you're in opposition. Well, actually, check the in favor, but that's okay. I can read minds too. All right, then Dan Morgan, Builders Association. I know you're here. At least you were, yeah, okay. Thank you for indulging me there, Ms. Stillwell.
Hi, good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Melinda Stillwell. I live right below the proposed new development in the 34 acres. I've ridden my horse for 35 years up there. These people are very minimizing the kind of, what is it, disturbance they use, the word disturbance. I can't even describe what he's saying. It's just not accurate. He's minimizing them, both of them are. I'm going to ask, please uphold the planners by saying no to this proposition, this conditional use proposition. I have a whole letter that I wrote and put in an email. Obviously, speaking in public makes me anxious, but it is also my heart, and it's my home. And it's not as close as my neighbors. They've said everything that I would say. I just wanted to make sure you all knew that the minimization of what this project, that piece, he does not need that extra piece. He already has all that rest of that land. Slow it down. Don't cut the ridge tops off, please. Please, thank you, and have a good afternoon, people.
Thank you, Ms. Stillwell. You did a fine job speaking in public. Mr. Morgan, followed by, oh, no, Ms. Carmelita Haltom, but you're in opposition. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, now, Mr. Morgan, you're up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Dan Morgan with the Builders Association. First, I wanted to commend you for your leadership to help deliver additional housing inventory to the much-needed market. As we all know, housing is at a premium right now throughout the region, and wanted to commend you for taking this matter up to make attainable housing available. The Five Ridges project has 9 different housing categories, or there's a great diversity of housing product within this project. And there will be almost 1,800, up to 1,800 units, and it is much needed in the market. So we are very supportive. We're supportive of that attainable housing and addressing that missing middle. And a number of the products that are gonna be available in Five Ridges will help address that. So we voice our support and compliment and appreciate your leadership in taking this up today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't have any more comment cards, but if you wishing to speak on this subject, now would be the time to make yourself known, and I'll need you to fill out a card afterwards, please. Just help us out by stating your name.
For the record, my name is Larry Gruby. I'm a professional land surveyor. I also checked the amount of additional disturbed acreage. I got at least 33 acres. I prepared a letter. This letter is with respect to the exhibit titled Existing CUP and Proposed Expansion produced by Christie Corporation and displayed at the April and May 2021 Sparks Planning Commission meetings. At the May 6th meeting, Senior Planner Sienna Reed stated with regards to the aforementioned exhibit that the additional area was 19.8 acres and that it was the area shown in tan. The area in tan on that exhibit is in reality a minimum of 33 acres, with over 25 acres being on the northwest portion of the project, Village 9. Ms. Hunterman, do you have my exhibit that I emailed you? Exhibit 1?
If you emailed an attachment with an email, it would have been added to the record.
Okay, I'll keep speaking. Within that area for Village 9, there's approximately 13.6 acres of public right-of-way and private lots within the latter 25 acres. This measurement was performed by registering the aforementioned display to the existing property lines, the majority of which were surveyed personally by me while employed by Summit Engineering before the granted construction approval for the use of the property as an aggregate pit in the 1990s. Property corners were located to a precision of 0.1 foot, and the PDF of the display registered to within a few horizontal feet. I also have, which apparently didn't get it into the record, I have a picture of what the disturbed area on the mountain is going to look like. So all that, what I basically did was I took Christie Corp's grading plan and I reverse engineered it and then put it into Google Earth. So what you have is a Google Earth view. This is what the DTM looked like after I constructed that. But this picture here is from, basically from Dolores Drive and Pyramid Highway. All the area you see in black up there is what will be visually disturbed. Now, I didn't have a 3D model of the house, so I couldn't show that. So I also have a view, which I emailed today, which shows it from basically the front of Nancy and, or on Dolores in front of Nancy Danner's house, which I don't appear to have. But at any rate, there's quite a bit of disturbance to the ridge line. The ridge line has approximately 5,100 feet of disturbed area, lineal, along the ridge line. Now, I worked a lot on DeAndrea. I got help, my feet got held to the fire by Karen Melby. She would have never let this go through. So, I mean, it seems like an unequal application of the laws, but there are, of the ordinances. But there's definitely going to be major disturbance along this ridge line.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the public wishing to speak at this time? Thank you, sir. All right, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the dais. Did you want to speak?
Well, do you want us to address some of the comments? Or?
No. We're gonna have the council ask questions. Questions from the council? Staff, come on up. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson. Armando Ornelas, Assistant Community Services Director. Just in anticipation of the questions, are we looking at questions that would be most appropriately addressed at engineering staff or planning staff or both? Engineering staff? Okay.
Let's bring the whole crew down here, and I'm sure there's gonna be a wide gambit of questions.
I'll be getting up and down since.
We'll just leave Sienna where
yeah,
she
Sienna,
is.
one or two.
So she doesn't have to walk around on that bad hip.
Move a little bit, just not a lot.
Okay, Ms. Bybee.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So on the engineering side, we've already heard one presentation from the appellant's engineer. from our engineering side, because the number one opposition, well, two oppositions from the neighbors that are there, and of course, the biggest concern, which I understand, is those who are downhill for peak flow, for water, for sediment, coming over the top of that and coming down into their yards. If this is improved, and I guess I'm looking at two, there's already a CUP approved. So part of that is already, part of that work is already approved and permitted and grading started. So we can only talk today about this new piece that's coming before us. What is from an engineering perspective, what can you tell me about the mitigation on the downhill north side compared to what they're showing of all the sediment basins and the detention ponds are on the inside, and I know some of the sloping? How does that affect, from an engineer's perspective, what happens on the opposite side going into the northern homes and area north of the project?
Thank you, Councilwoman Bybee. I'm John Erickson, City Engineer, for the record. As Mr. House presented in his presentation, he has reduced, or the project will be reducing the flows going to the north, in some cases by half. And so the overall flow that would be typically going to the north would be reduced. With regards to the velocity question, I would defer that to Mr. House. I do not have the information with regards to the velocity on those slopes. But with regards to the engineering, it just is a betterment, in my professional opinion, that it will reduce the amount of sediment that goes down to the Pyramid Highway. As you may recall, back in 2017, the Pyramid Highway almost overtopped there. And so by reducing those flows that they're proposing, will only make a betterment along the Pyramid Highway.
And that's from the whole system of detention basins, the sediment gathering, the temporary, the permanent on the site itself. But so coming over the other side, since everything they're doing is inside the bowl, is it capturing and drawing it into the bowl instead of sending it
That
north?
is correct. Yeah, it's intercepting the water that would typically be going to the north, or today goes to the north, and it would force that water to the south and to the east, and go through their storm drain system.
So would the grading that's being proposed in this CUP in villages 8, 9, and 10, this current grading, would it increase the probability of more flow and more sediment because of the cuts and the fill that's happening with the proposed changes to grading?
Yeah, in Mr. House's presentation, it reduces the total flow that would go to the north. And so all that would be captured and routed down to Pyramid along the west side of Pyramid Way, and then be transported to the south where it goes into that concrete sedimentation basin in Kiley Range North, or excuse me, in Kiley Range.
Okay, that answers that. I might have more questions later, but I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the council have questions? I don't see any. Help me out. Help me use this technology. Or just raise your hand. Mr. Anderson.
I'm just trying to get a better picture of this in my head as far as the slopes that are currently there. We saw the one rendering where, same thing that Councilwoman Bybee just mentioned, trying to understand the flows and which direction they're going to go. So by moving the ridge line lower and actually moving that water that would normally be on the ridge going north, it's now moving south down through the development itself. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So then what about the slopes on the north side and the percentage of slope as far as the standards they're meeting? Because everything I'm reading that staff has reviewed and approved, can you help me out to understand that?
The 2-to-1 slope is what we would refer to as an engineered slope. And in the building code, it does allow for an engineered slope to be approved and reviewed. And we have reviewed that geotechnical report that was prepared for the project. And It's by a licensed geotechnical engineer.
Okay. And then if you could just, again, help me understand with the vegetation. I know there's concern that if it's watered, it's going to die off in time, but that vegetation that's going to be put on that slope, isn't that going to simulate what is already there on the slope?
Yes, I mean, it's a natural blended seed mix that will be placed, and then that bonded fiber matrix will be placed on top of it. The applicant has indicated that they're committed to providing irrigation water or landscape water for the seed mix to grow, and that we've also bonded or required a bond so that we will hold that bond until such time that slope starts to germinate and we get a solid, stable slope.
Okay. And then the way that it's going to be seeded is different from the hydro seeding. If you could help me understand that as well.
And it's a bonded fiber matrix, and so that it gets seeded, and then the fiber bonded matrix is placed over the top of that seeding, and so that fiber matrix holds that seeding in place, and then as water, as it gets watered, it will germinate, and then the seeds or the plants that grow in there will take over and over time.
Okay. And so it's less likely that a rain comes and it's going to wash down the hill.
That is correct.
Okay,
yes.
got it. So then the other thing that I wanted to understand was the discrepancy that we're hearing from homeowners versus staff and the developer as far as the amount of disturbance. Help me understand that as well, please.
With regards to the disturbance area, I'll let Mr. Martini address this question, I take it. Sorry, John.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. So,
Just identify yourself.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm John Martini Eater, Assistant City Manager for External Services. So in tonight's presentation, we have been put on notice that an independent set of calculations with regard to the disturbance area has been done. It is not something that your staff has had the opportunity to review. We don't know what it says, what the basis of the calculations are. Additionally, and I believe the presenter said that the calculations had been stamped by a licensed engineer. That also needs to be verified, because the facts of the matter in front of us is the applicant and their professional engineers who have certified the calculations that are before you in the record today have been reviewed by your staff and have been found to be appropriate. If there is a dispute, it is incumbent upon that same staff to review the claim of the dispute and evaluate it to see if we do have a bona fide disagreement between professional engineers.
Thank you.
Mr. Dare.
A lot of my questions have been answered. We appreciate staff. Thank you guys for your expertise. One of the things that we do keep hearing, and like their road keeps getting wiped out, we have flooding down. And so in your guys' estimation, what we're doing with this project could potentially help those problems. Is that true?
That is correct. And again, John Erickson, City Engineer for the record. Yeah, it will reduce the total peak flow in some cases, by half. So there's a tremendous benefit on the stormwater runoff.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Bybee?
So, I've got so many notes and so many things I'm trying to process, and I will agree with Councilman Dare, not an engineer, so I'm really depending heavily on all of the experts, and I try to base my opinions on facts and on numbers, and it's tough because, this is emotional. And I will say, before I ask my next question, for all of you who have written, who have called, who've gone to meetings, thank you. it's part of the public process, and it's super important for you to have your voice heard, for you to take the time today, for you to reach out to your neighbors. Much appreciated, because this is an important part of what we do. It's not always easy for the decisions we have to make, but we do need to hear from you, and I appreciate the time you took out of all of your lives to be here and to express what your opinions are. With the grading that is proposed for this portion, for this CUP, is it also, because in some of my notes I have the developer said that that it's just fill grading and slopes. Then I reached out to staff and they're responding that it also includes ridge lines. So the ridge line's already being affected in the previous CUP. This is something additional. This is something additional to 8, 9, and 10, it looks like, and some other portions of 1A, 1B, 3, some other pieces. How much difference in the ridgeline disturbance are we seeing? Obviously, I'm well aware that this is not a protected ridgeline, and there are protected ridgelines in the city of Sparks. This is not one. But it is still biggest concern of a lot of the residents here in opposition. So give me an idea from more of an expert's perspective on ridgeline effects of this project. And I guess I'll leave you with that and I'll come back.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, for the record, Santa Reed, Senior Planner. To your question, Councilmember Bybee, I'm actually going to pull up one of the images that we showed in the presentation because I think it does kind of a good example of showing our existing approved CUP boundary in relation to what is being proposed and general kind of hilltop and ridge features. So the ridge features, at least on the northern portion of the project site, are generally in this location, which is Village 10 within the Five Ridges Land Plan, kind of wrap around, and we also have some ridgeline features in the north of Village 9. And so most of the ridgeline features are included within the approved CUP disturbance area. However, one of the things that's really important to point out here is that we didn't have the grading plans for villages 8, 9, and 10 when the initial CUP was approved last year. And so while we have issued a mass grading permit for disturbance within these areas, we do have the ability, because it is a substantial change, to review those plans today and, as we noted, place conditions on the created slopes and buildings associated with that ridgeline development. And so staff did recommend to the Planning Commission new and amended conditions to do so, to address ridgeline development. Again, the adequacy of those conditions is subjective. It is important to note that in terms of, the actual expansion area for the CUP, what has been submitted to the city at this point is 19.8 acres of natural slope disturbance. That's the area shown in tan, and then a small amount of area that would be previously disturbed to the west of Village 1B.
So I guess my question is, the development agreement already includes all the green and the tan, so Village 9, which is in the new CUP proposed amendment today, is a part of the development agreement, is included in the development agreement. This CUP is really for the grading of that, and if this is not approved today, what happens to the land that's already in the development agreement that's been approved? Doesn't get graded, has to be changed again. I mean, give me an idea what the ramifications would be.
So just to walk through this from a process perspective and then get to potential ramifications. So the development agreement included a conceptual land plan, and different development applications have been coming into the city and reviewed through their appropriate processes for some time now. That said, one of the provisions in the development agreement is that a CUP for disturbance of slopes, hilltops, and ridges be pursued. That's being done in two parts. The first part was approved in May of 2020 last year. The second part is before the council today. And so if that second phase of the grading to support the land plan were not approved, then there would be a few options available to the developer. They could potentially say, do we want to try and include the lots within the existing CUP disturbance area? That would very likely mean much smaller lots with homes that are much closer together. That is something that staff did analyze in our comment responses in our addendum to the staff report to the Planning Commission, and noted that we had concerns that that could actually create more substantial visual impacts, especially near Village 10, just because those homes, again, would be on smaller lots and much closer together. Also, the ability to do an increased rear yard setback would likely not be feasible. And so beyond that potential option, the developer could choose to come back with an alternate grading plan in the future to further disturb some areas of the project site to accommodate additional lots and move forward as they're generally anticipating to do with the SF6 zoning district standards that don't necessarily let the lots get quite as small as we see with small lot standards. So those would be the primary two options available in terms of moving forward with developing the Five Ridges project site, ultimately in compliance with that development agreement that specifies we have a minimum of 1,200 homes to achieve.
Okay. So that helps. So basically, because the other ridge lines are already approved in the CUP that has been approved and has permitted for grading, if this one was not approved and density could be increased to the other sections, you would see more homes from Pyramid Way and from the north, if that was the case. And you're also saying that the possible setbacks would not be 30 feet, they're only 20 feet right now, so you'd have homes closer to the fences, closer to the ridge, and more obtrusive if that was the case. Because we do have, that whole ridge is already going to be graded. That's already in the plan.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? Okay. Yeah, Blake, you want to have one last bite at this apple before we take a vote?
I think I just want to address some of the neighbors' comments. They asked about duration and would we be around and all that, and I think John addressed it. This will be bonded by the city as far as the financially bonded as far as the improvements, the bonded fiber matrix taking and being in place. We won't have that bond released from us until such time as the city staff itself says that it has taken and that's accepted to their standards for the growth, which is 90% of what they're seeing there. I have some other issues, but I think everything's been stated at this point, and I'll let council speak at this point. And if there are any other questions, please do speak to us. Thank you.
Okay. All right, bring it back one more time to council, Mr. Dare.
So this is in my ward, so I'll go ahead and talk about this for a second and then try a motion. So I understand that the hardest part about this job is sitting back watching groups of people and things change, things shift, and then also see where people don't want things and then other people want things and things we need as a city. I understand also our planning commission felt that there was more work that needed to be reached. And I definitely have taken the time, and I will always take the time to listen to people's fears or thoughts. One of the things today, though, we find ourselves is that we have a staff that we believe in. I have a staff I believe in. I have a staff I trust. I couldn't do this job without them. And I say that because of that, and I can go through a lot of different things, but at the end of it all, I appreciate everyone coming here today. But I have even today spent more time with our staff on things that I saw, things that I heard. I appreciate Cole let me come out and see it. Thank you this morning. I appreciate the invite. I hope you invite me again. Blake, I appreciate your group coming and making a commitment, and I make a commitment too that I want to see this done well. If it's going to be done, it's going to be done well. With that said, I can make a motion and see how that goes. Do you want to show me the motion? There we go.
Well, we're waiting on that. Any other comments from the council?
Okay, sorry.
We're good?
Motions.
Okay.
It's page 17 and 18.
It's the staff.
Depending on which alternative you're looking at.
3. So I make the motion for alternative 3, that we reverse the decision of the Planning Commission and approve the CUP amendment with the 10 conditions of approval recommended by staff.
Okay.
I move to, do you want me to keep reading? Should I keep reading, or is? I move to reverse the Sparks Planning Commission's decision to deny the amendment to conditional permit, CU 20-005, to increase the disturbance area to allow development of a site that is 10 acres in size or larger, with slope gradients of 10% or greater over 25% or more of the site, which is 421.5 acres in size, and it's generally located at 555 Highland Ranch Parkway, Sparks, Nevada, and the SF6 residential single family, and MF2 zoning districts adopting findings C13 through C5, and the facts supporting these findings is set forth in the staff report, subject to the 10 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion. I'm looking for a second. Ms. Bybee?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any further, a motion and a second, any further discussion? Mr. Anderson?
Likewise, I want to thank all of you for coming out and speaking with us today. As Councilman Dare said, we, like the Planning Commission, rely heavily on staff and where they're coming. And it is tough. I've lived my entire life in this area. My wife kept her horses where now is houses. We used to go riding and hiking where either you're living or I'm living in this community. And the struggle is, how do we have smart development? Where can we make the right decisions? And on this one, I'm leaning into the staff and their direction on this. And I just want to say that I hear what you're saying. I understand your concerns, but I'm in favor of this as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Ms. Bybee?
I had one more comment for the developer. To respect concerns of the residents and the ridge lines that are being disturbed, if there's any ways you're developing your development, that those houses that are on the ridge line, if as many one stories could be there versus 2, and I know that's your decision as you're planning it, but if you could focus on, that would be a little bit of a mitigation of, I know the 30-foot setback for the 2-story is going to help, but I think more 1-story, if you have a choice, instead of all 2 stories on those ridgeside lots, would be helpful. And that's just not my condition, but just a request.
If I can address that, as I mentioned, these lots are already sold at this point, but I can address that with the builders as they go forward. Single-story homes are the preferred homes. The other thing that I would say is working with our engineers, Scott Christie, if there's anything that we could do to minimize this grading as we go into final maps and other things, if we can find alternatives that minimize even more of the grading on there, we'd happy to implement that at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments from the council? Mr. Abbott?
And I would just, I think, ask the neighbors and developers, keep open communication, as well as all of us too, during all of this. And I do want to ask, Christopher, did you, just make sure, I thought you said maybe C3 to C5, and I think it should be C1 to C5. I might be wrong, but
Say again, then, C1 through C5.
I'm sorry if I was wrong,
Oh, no,
just
no.
double checking.
No, it's okay. It did move at that point, so C1 through C5, just in case we, and
Okay. Any further discussion?
And I'm okay on the second, if we're restating it.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, and no further discussion. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously with 4 in favor, 1 abstention.
What about the acreage?
Okay, let's move on to item 12.1, public comment. And it's Nicholas, and I'm gonna, Sheepak, okay, I thought that's what it said, but I didn't want to mispronounce it.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Nick Sheepak, for the record. I am the Policy and Program Associate for the ACLU of Nevada. Here to make public comment concerning the establishment of the Police Advisory Commission. The ACLU wants to commend the council and Chief Crawford for establishing this commission. And we want to place on our record, or on the record, our intention to work with this commission, our desire to be possibly on the commission or work in any capacity. We will reach out directly to the chief and the police department moving forward to figure out how we can do this. We think this is a great idea for the city of Sparks and should be a model for the rest of the state. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you again. Wasn't the best day to bring a plastic water bottle.
You and me both. Okay, let's move on to 12.2, announcements from the mayor, city council, city manager. Do we have any announcements or comments? Mr. Abbott? You want to talk about Kick for a Cause? I think you do.
I'll let you talk about that for me and talk about how you got dunked.
Tell us how many dollars you raised in this Kick for a Cause.
All right, for anyone that doesn't know, since I'm being asked, we did a kickball fundraising kickball tournament on Saturday at Shadow Mountain. It's for kids with disabilities. We had Mayor Lawson out to get dunked. We raised $22,837, I think, right now. We took care of every kid that got nominated. We also had a couple single, there was a single mother there that she's been on a waiting list for 2 years to get some therapy for one of her kids. And no one bid on the silent auction item, and we were able to give it to her. And so she was, just in tears. I feel like I'm going to cry soon eventually as well. We were also able to give her $3,000 in addition to that, as well as take care of every kid that was nominated to help them out. And so it was a pretty cool event. I learned a lot running my own little kickball tournament with my friends. My best friend's kid has cerebral palsy. It's one of the reasons why I'm out there trying to help out. So thank you all for being there. And that wasn't what I was trying to request, but
It was a good cause.
it was a fun
It
time,
was a good day,
definitely.
and it was great to see our citizens out and all the families out there.
Mayor was a good sport.
Which along those lines, I'm gonna just say, we had a Hello Summer celebration last Wednesday that was really, really good, right up until it rained like buckets. And, but everybody had a great time up until that point. And then we're gonna do another event like that because it's so well received by the citizenry. Anyone else?
It's at my original still.
Okay, go
Is that-
right ahead, sir.
Cool. I would like to place an item on the future agenda for city council to consider whether to direct the city manager to make changes for the Sparks Municipal Code sections regarding alcoholic beverage license fees for theaters and nonprofit entities.
Okay. Got it? All right, last chance. Otherwise, we move on to my favorite item number. Item 13, adjournment. The city council is adjourned.
Okay, but don't go anywhere. We are going to,
You guys can leave if you want.
you guys can leave. This is redevelopment agency. I'd like to call to order, and this is going to be a quick one.
As soon as that pops up.
Okay, this will be really quick.
Oh, this is gonna be fast.
This is waiting for me. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of Monday, June 28th, 2021, with a roll call.
Chairperson Bybee?
Here.
Agency members Abbott?
Here.
Vanderwell? Absent. Anderson?
Here.
Lawson?
Here.
Dare?
Here.
Acting Chief Legal Officer Duncan? Chief Administrative Officer Kurtz?
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment for redevelopment agency? Seeing none, we'll move on to agent 4. I can't even talk. Agenda item number 4, 4.1, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by agency member Lawson and a second by agency member Dare. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote.
Oh, I'll move it.
Move second. We're talking too fast for our computer.
Come on.
We have a motion. We have a second.
We need some technology movement here.
Okay. Okay, now please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, going on to the minutes. Item 5. Item 5.1, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for May 24th, 2021. Do I have corrections, additions, or a motion to approve the minutes as submitted? Oh, I have a motion by agency member Anderson.
Move to approve the May 24th, 2021 Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting minutes.
Okay. Agency member Dare.
Second.
So I have a motion by agency member Anderson, seconded by agency member Dare. Please vote.
Mine's not showing.
Oh, did it already show that we voted?
That's so weird.
It showed we voted and passed it. Did you guys vote on it? Yeah.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, so we're going to move on to 6.1. Consideration and possible acceptance of the reports of the claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of May 6th, 2021 through June 11th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by agency member Abbott,
Second.
second by agency member Lawson. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on. We are just faster than the computer. 7.1, consideration, discussion, possible approval of resolution number RSRA 136 to abolish the redevelopment fund 3402.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Chairwoman Bybee, agency members. Solid finish, and it'll be quick. I'm before you today to get a resolution approved to abolish one fund of the redevelopment agency, Area 1. That one fund is the redevelopment fund, which was last used in 2009 to manage bond proceeds of the area. And with the resolution will rescind the originating resolution as well. With that, I'd be able to answer any questions you might have.
Do I have any questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for motion. Motion, go ahead, member Dare.
I move to approve resolution number RSRA 136 to abolish the redevelopment fund 3402.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay.
Sorry, Paul Anderson for the record. Second.
I have a motion by agency member Dare, seconded by agency member Anderson. Please vote. Okay, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it. Number 8, comments. Do I have any comments from the public for the redevelopment agency? Still none. Okay, we'll move right on. And we should be announcements from the agency and chief administrative officer. Any announcements? Anyone? No? Okay, well, we'll move on to my favorite, 9. We're adjourned.
Look at this.